You were born into a cage so elegant, you call it truth. What follows is not an escape, but the systematic stripping of the bars until you realize there was never a door, never a floor, never a you to leave at all. Let's begin. The voice in your head is not you. You woke up this morning and spoke to yourself. Quietly, internally, an echoing stream of words running beneath the crust of your awareness. You heard it. You are hearing it now. That voice narrating. Your actions, analyzing your failures, planning your future, rehearsing arguments, apologizing in advance. But here's the first incision. Who is speaking? You say I. You say me. But the voice, that constant mental murmur, is not the one listening. It's not the one observing. And it's certainly not the one choosing. Psychologist Julian Jaynes once hypothesized that consciousness, as we understand it, is a relatively recent invention. He argued that the ancients, those who built temples and obeyed gods and fell in line to fight wars, did so not through conscious deliberation, but because they quite literally heard voices. Command hallucinations from one hemisphere of the brain to the other, interpreted as divine command. So the voice in your head? It might be nothing more than a biological leftover. An inner narrator evolved to maintain a coherent illusion of self. It speaks as if it's you, but it operates like a looped program, repeating patterns, rehashing memories, forecasting trauma that hasn't happened yet. It narrates, but it doesn't act. Your muscles move before it finishes forming the sentence. Your decisions arise before it catches up. You feel a pull, and then the voice explains it afterward, pretending it made the choice. Neuroscience backs this up with a scalpel's precision. Benjamin Libet's famous experiments in the 1980s showed that brain activity associated with a decision, say, to move your finger, can be detected up to 7 seconds before you consciously decide to act. Read that again. Your brain knows what you'll do long before your conscious mind pretends. It's in control. And if you're not making the decisions, then who is? Modern neuroscience doesn't have an answer, only more incision points. Take the split brain patients. Individuals whose corpus callosum, the bridge between the brain's hemispheres, has been severed, often to treat epilepsy. These patients offer an uncomfortable mirror. When an object is shown only to the left visual field, processed by the right brain, the left hemisphere, the one usually responsible for language, can't see it. But when asked to point to it, the patient can do so effortlessly. Then, when asked why they pointed, the left hemisphere makes up an explanation completely false, yet delivered with full conviction. I saw it earlier. It looked familiar. In that moment, the voice you think of as yourself is fabricating reasons for an action it didn't initiate, based on stimuli it never perceived. It is rationalization, not rationality. You are not a mind. You are a justification engine. And still you say, but I feel like I'm choosing. I feel like I'm me. Feelings are not proof. The earth feels flat. The sun feels like it moves around us. Your sense of self is no more trustworthy than a hallucination of heat in a cold room. The sensations are real, but their interpretation is a lie. Consider this. If your thoughts arise before your awareness, and your actions before your explanation, then the conscious you is merely a commentator, not the player, not the game. Just the sports announcer screaming metaphors at a match that's already over. Meditation gurus and neuroscientists, both unwilling allies, converge on this abyss. The longer you sit in silence, the more you observe your thoughts as clouds. Passing through the sky, the more disturbing the realization becomes. You do not create your thoughts. You notice them. Like a guest watching a film you didn't choose, you sit and react, pretend, explain. You are a prisoner of post hoc narration. Now think back. Every moment you've ever regretted, every pain you've caused, every word you screamed in anger, or whispered in shame. You thought it was you, but it was a reflex, a pattern, a firing of circuits before the story kicked in. You are not the conductor. You are the echo chamber. There is no self at the wheel. Just a storm of cognition trying desperately to explain. The chaos. When you say, I think, you mean thoughts happened, and I noticed. When you say, I want, you mean desires occurred, and I attached to them. When you say, I, what you really mean is nothing coherent at all, Dot. And if the self is just a story, if you are merely the voice speaking after the event, then what listens? What watches the voice? You've never been able to find it, have you? Not with all your self-reflection, your journaling, your therapy sessions, your meditations. You peer inward and see something, a sense of presence, but it slips like mist between your fingers. It has no shape, no color, no location, no texture. You can't measure it. You can't define it. You just feel it's there, the observer behind the thoughts, the you behind the you. But what if that presence is just another illusion? What if even the awareness that you're aware is part of the script? If you don't choose your thoughts, don't initiate your actions, can't define your observer, and can't separate the voice from the reaction, then what exactly is you? Or perhaps more disturbingly, was there ever a you at all? The memory that remembers itself, you believe you are your memories. You hold them close like precious photographs in a fireproof box. The name of your first teacher, the smell of your mother's cooking, the exact moment someone told you that you weren't good enough. You think these fragments are sacred, that they define you, build you, explain you. But what if they lie? You've forgotten far more than you've remembered. That's the first cut. Every second of every day, your brain filters out 99.999% of all sensory information. The color of the wall in a room you sat in for years. The exact sound of your father's voice. The time you cried so hard you forgot why. All of it gone, not because it didn't happen, but because your brain decided it was inconvenient to keep. And what remains? Corrupted files. Edits of edits. Studies in cognitive psychology, particularly those pioneered by Elizabeth Loftus, have proven again and again that memory is not archival, it is reconstructive. Every time you remember something, you are not retrieving a file, you are rewriting. Each act of remembrance degrades the original. Your most cherished moments are re-illustrated paintings, touched up by a trembling hand every time they're viewed. The hippocampus doesn't store truth. It stores stories that feel true. In one study, participants were shown altered photographs of their childhood scenes that never happened, like a hot air balloon ride they never took. With enough suggestion and repetition, many participants began to remember these events, not vaguely, but vividly. They described the color of the balloon, the feel of the wind, the joy on their parents' face. It wasn't deception. It was certainty. The mind does not ask, is this real? It asks, does this fit? If you can implant memories, and those memories generate emotion, and those emotions sculpt identity, then how do you know which parts of you are fabricated? You say, but I remember trauma. I remember betrayal. I remember who hurt me. Yes, you do. But do they? Did they say those words exactly? Did they look at you with that expression? Are you remembering what happened or how it felt? Emotions fossilize memory. They don't preserve truth. They harden perception. Two people experience the same event and emerge with two entirely different universes. Ask any courtroom. Ask any family. Ask your sibling why they remember your childhood differently than you. One of you is wrong. Possibly both. And sometimes the fabrication is total. Take the case of Clive Waring, the British conductor who lost his ability to form new memories after viral encephalitis. His memory resets every few seconds. He lives in a perpetual now. Every moment is the first moment. His journal is filled with lines like, "I am awake for the first time," written dozens of times a day. He is intelligent. He can play music, but he has no narrative. No yesterday. No tomorrow. He is a consciousness without identity, a mind without a self. And yet, he still uses I. What is I without memory? You might say, but I remember who I am. Do you? The moment you try to recall your past, your mind fills in the gaps with assumptions, expectations, interpolations. You don't remember being 4 years old. You remember a story about being 4 years old. If a single photograph disappeared, or one phrase your mother once said was revealed to be false, your entire internal mythology would shift. What happens if your foundational memories are wrong? Consider the Mandela effect, a term now largely reduced to internet trivia, but whose implications are devastating. Thousands of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. Thousands remember the Berenstain Bears spelled with an E. They aren't joking. They aren't lying. They're confident. One explanation? Mass false memory, shaped by similar exposure to cultural fragments. A more disturbing implication? Your memory is not a static container. It is a social construct, constantly reconstructed by language, suggestion, and cultural priming. You don't just remember privately. You remember collectively. And if memory is shaped by context, then so is identity. So when you sit alone and think about who you are, your trauma, your joy, your most sacred truth, so you are not communing with your core. You are accessing a corrupted, recontextualized, socially curated hallucination, updated every time you try to retrieve it. There is no original file. Even the act of remembering that you remembered something before is a trick. Psychologists call it source amnesia. You recall the fact, but not where it came from. You're not tracing a path. You're climbing a fractal staircase that loops forever. Let's go deeper. Some patients with brain injuries develop confabulation, a condition where the brain fills in memory gaps with fabricated details without any intent to deceive. Invent life stories, jobs, relationships. They believe them with absolute conviction. And these aren't rare delusions. They emerge from the same machinery you rely on to define your entire life. So where is the boundary between false memory and real identity? Even Alzheimer's does not erase the self all at once. It erodes memory by degrees. One day you forget a name, then a face, then an entire decade. And somewhere in that erosion, the you begins to vanish. Not because your body fails, but because your narrative collapses. What does that tell you? It tells you that you are a ghost pinned to memory, but memory is not reliable. Memory is not stable. Memory is not real. You are a ship whose planks are constantly replaced mid-voyage by a blind carpenter with shaky hands. And when you finally look down and ask, am I the same vessel that began this journey? The answer is not no. It is worse. The answer is, there never was a vessel at all. Only the illusion of motion. Only the story of self. So if you are not your memories, and you are not your voice, and you are not your choices, what is left to be you? The time that eats itself. You think you're moving through time, but time is moving through you. You wake, you work, you sleep, you mark the calendar, you plan for tomorrow, you regret yesterday. The clock ticks, and with every passing second, you reinforce the illusion that time flows like a river, always forward, always pushing the present into the past. But this isn't how time works. It's not even how your own brain experiences it. Physics has no preference for direction. At the fundamental level, particles, forces, entropy, the equations run equally well forwards or backwards. The universe doesn't demand a next. There is no past and future in the math of reality. There's just configuration, state, snapshot. The arrow of time, as you feel it, is psychological, subjective, constructed. You do not move through time. Your brain renders it. Let that settle. The sensation of now, of movement from one moment to the next, is a biological hallucination. You think you experience the present, but your brain delays your perception of reality by roughly 500 milliseconds. Half a second. Everything you believe is happening now is already half a second old. Like watching a live broadcast with a hidden delay, you're always behind, but you can't notice because your mind fills in the gaps. Even worse, your brain often reorders the sequence of events to preserve causality, your sense of causality. If you press a button and a light flashes, your brain may perceive the light as having occurred slightly earlier than it did, just to make the narrative flow. Your sense of what caused what is not an observation. It's a story, time as you feel. It is a forgery. Einstein proved it a century ago. Time bends. Time stretches. Time slows under gravity. A clock on a mountaintop ticks faster than a clock at sea level. Twins age differently, depending on how fast they travel. This isn't theory. We must account for this distortion every time you use GPS. If your phone didn't correct for the time dilation between satellites and Earth, your location would be off by kilometers and minutes dot, so your second is not the same as another second. Your moment is not universal. There is no shared now. Then what are you standing in? And what of your memories? Are they time? No, they're marks. And flawed ones. You don't remember time. You remember change. The difference between this and that. That's why unfamiliar days vanish in hindsight, because nothing stood out. That's why traumatic moments etch themselves into you, because everything changed. Memory doesn't measure time. It maps disturbance dot. This explains the horror of routine. Days blur together, not because they were short, but because they were identical. You believe you lived a week, a year, a decade, but how many moments can you actually retrieve? 5? 10? So what is time, then, if not motion? It is order. It is a frame. It is your attempt to chain events into meaning, but physics does not need that chain. Block universe theory, the most mathematically elegant solution to space-time, suggests that the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. Every moment you've ever lived and will ever live already is. You're not moving through time. You're experiencing a frozen slice of a static totality dot in this view. Your birth and death are not endpoints. They are locations. And the you reading these words? A still frame in a film that doesn't roll. If this is true, then your future already exists. Your choices already sit, unchangeable, in the lattice of space-time. The fear you will feel tomorrow is already echoing. The regret you'll carry next year is already happening. You are not moving forward. You are waking up to fixed scenes, one after another. In an order your consciousness cannot escape. You are a machine for misreading time. But perhaps you want to hold on to entropy, the degradation of order, the one thing that does seem to move forward. You point to decay, to aging, to collapse. Surely that proves time flows. But entropy isn't time. Entropy is probability. Systems tend toward disorder, not because time demands it, but because there are more ways to be disordered than ordered. A shuffled deck is more common than a sorted one. And your body, your thoughts, your identity, they decay not because time flows, but because they are patterns statistically unlikely to persist. You don't feel time passing. You feel structure dissolving. But what if the deepest horror is this? Time doesn't pass at all. Consider Julian Barber's timeless physics. He argues that reality consists of an infinite collection of nows, complete, self-contained configurations of the universe, like individual frames of a film reel. There is no motion, no flow, no cause, just adjacent frames, some containing the illusion of memory, others not. You believe you came from yesterday, but that belief is encoded within the present frame. There was no yesterday. Let that erode you. The you of 1 second ago no longer exists. There is no continuity. Each frame is its own world. Your memory of having existed 5 minutes ago is merely a feature of this current frame. The mind dreams continuity the way a flipbook pretends motion. You have never moved. Not once. You have simply been each configuration in sequence. But the sequence is meaningless unless you believe in it. And if time is just stitched together delusion, then what does that say about your life? What does it mean if every future moment is already fixed? That every breath you think you choose was chosen long ago, not by a god, but by the very structure of reality. Not free will, not fate, but frozen inevitability. You thought time was the stage. But time is the cage. So when you plan, when you hope, when you long for a future self who has grown, who has healed, who has conquered the trauma of memory, you are not reaching forward. You are replaying a frame in which you believe that you are reaching forward. And when death comes, it won't be a final moment. It will be just another frame, one of infinite frames in which you are eternally dying. And if that's true, if you're not moving and there's nowhere to go, then where exactly are you right now? You believe in others. You believe they exist. You believe they think. You believe they feel. You believe they are as real as you are. But what if you're wrong? Right now, you imagine the people around you, your friends, your family, the stranger. In the car next to you, the distant dead in history books all share a common interiority. You imagine that behind every face is a self, a stream of thought, a consciousness like yours, because it feels like that must be true, because otherwise, the entire fabric of your life begins to unravel. But can you prove it? This is the problem of other minds, one of philosophy's most enduring and corrosive thought traps. You can observe behavior. You can hear words. You can detect signals. But you will not ever observe another's consciousness directly. You only ever infer it. And all inference is circular. They act like you, therefore they must feel like you. But machines can now act like you. Algorithms can generate language that mimics thought. Synthetic voices can cry. Robots can simulate empathy. And they do not feel. They function. So what if the people around you are functioning? Consider solipsism, the philosophical position that only your mind is sure to exist. You recoil from it, not because it's wrong, but because it's unlivable. The idea that every other being you've ever loved might be a sophisticated hallucination is emotionally intolerable. So you reject it out of necessity, not logic. Yet logic will not let you go. When you say, "My mother loves me," you are interpreting behavior, not accessing experience. When you say, "My friend is in pain," you are imagining a mirror of yourself. And that mirror is cracked. Infants don't develop the concept of other minds for months. At birth, the world is not full of people. It is full of motion and noise. Even you had to learn to assign minds to faces. You had to be trained to believe in others, and that belief is fragile. Take Cottard's delusion, a rare mental disorder in which individuals believe they are dead or do not exist. In extreme cases, patients believe that no one else exists either. Their perception of external minds collapses completely. They don't stop seeing people. They stop believing in them. The visual data remains. The sound remains. The shape of conversation continues. But the meaning of others gone. What makes you think you're immune? Even without delusion, you already reduce people to symbols. The barista is a dispenser. The politician is a villain. The cashier is invisible. The driver in the other car is an object. You interact with avatars, not humans. Your brain compresses, categorizes, automates. Most of your interactions aren't with people, they're with predictions of people. You're not talking to them. You're talking to your internal model of them. And what about when you're alone? You hear voices in your head. You argue with people who aren't there. You rehearse their reactions. You simulate their emotions. The majority of your relationships exist entirely inside your mind. You construct entire lives for others in silence, and sometimes you never verify if any of it was true. You think that's empathy. It might be delusion. There's an experiment. A computer is set to respond with pre-written phrases, simple, generic questions, vague reflections. People converse with it and walk away believing it understood them, felt for them, knew them. This is the Eliza effect, your tendency to attribute understanding where none exists. You give minds to machines. You give meaning to syntax. You assign life to patterns. Now, ask yourself, how often have you done this with people? You fell in love with someone who said all the right words, but didn't mean them. You trusted someone who was performing the role. You believed in sincerity that turned out to be survival. People mimic. They echo. They pretend. You've done it too. So which ones were real? And when you mourn the dead, are you mourning their consciousness or your idea of it? The vast majority of your sadness is not their absence, but the vacuum of your story of them. They are gone, but they are also nowhere, and you never truly knew what they were. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" A creature with sonar, a different sensory world, a totally alien mode of existence. You can't imagine it, not truly. You can only project your own mind onto it. But Nagel's real horror was not the bat. It was you. Because if you cannot know the mind of a bat, then how can you ever claim to know the mind of another human? You can't. You believe in other minds because the alternative is unbearable. You cling to the illusion of shared consciousness because the abyss of isolation would crush you. But the abyss is real. The gap between bodies is unbridgeable. You can never climb inside someone else's experience. You can never feel their feeling. You only ever watch shadows and assign them depth. This is why language exists, not to share thought, but to simulate it. This is why you smile at strangers, not because you know them, but because you hope they are real. This is why you weep at funerals, not just for loss, but for the suspicion that the one who is gone was never fully known at all. So when you say, "I know you," or "I understand," or "I love," what exactly are you loving? A performance? A projection? A ghost made from words and gestures and imagined interiors? And if everyone else is a mirror, what happens when they stop reflecting? What are you looking at when you look at them? And what if nothing is ever looking back? The self that watches itself disappear you are trying to hold on. You've followed the voice. You've questioned your memories. You've watched time unravel beneath you. And now you turn inward toward the last hiding place of meaning. You say, "At least I am aware. At least there is something watching. Some witness to the collapse. Some light in the dark." But that, too, is an illusion. Let's begin with introspection, the sacred act of looking inward. You believe you can do this, that there's a kind of internal flashlight you can aim at your own thoughts and discover truth. You say, "I'm self-aware," as if that grants you authority over your reality. But introspection is not direct access. It's another performance. You don't see yourself, you see a model of yourself, constructed by your brain, filtered through belief, preference, survival. You are a shadow puppet operating a mirror, mistaking its movement for yours. Consider this. The very thought, I am self-aware, is not evidence of self-awareness. It is just a thought, a pattern, something arising in the brain like a ripple on water. You didn't summon it. It occurred. You didn't create the thought. You noticed it. And then you assigned it meaning. But what if you stop believing in that meaning? Descartes said, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. It was his foundation, a final immovable truth. But he was wrong. Because you don't think. Thought happens. You don't create it. It emerges. It pulses out of the darkness. And you mistake it for authorship. So the truth is not, I think, therefore I am. It is, there is thought. That's all. That's the entire certainty. And thought does not require a thinker. Just as a flame does not require a flamekeeper. Just as a wave does not require a waver. You are not the origin. You are the echo. At your sense of identity, what exactly is it? Not your body, that's changing, aging, dying. Not your personality, that shifts depending on who you're around. Not your thoughts, they contradict themselves daily. Not your emotions, they come and go like weather systems. So what is it? The philosopher David Hume tried to find his self. He sat with his mind and examined it piece by piece. And what did he find? Nothing. Just sensations, just perceptions. He wrote, I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception. In other words, there is no self-only experience happening to no one. This is not poetry. It is neurological fact, split brain studies, phantom limb sensations, dissociative identity disorder. These aren't outliers. They are revelations. They show the self as modular, fluid, glitch-prone. People with dissociative disorders can switch between personalities with different memories, handwriting, even allergies. Who is the real one? All of them. None? And what about you? Are you the self you were at 5 years old? 15? 25? Are you the version that cries at music, or the one that yells in traffic, or the one that politely nods in meetings? Which of these is you? Or are you just a kaleidoscope of shifting masks, each wearing the others, in an infinite recursion of pretending? Even your name, your sacred identifier, is not yours. It was given to you, spoken into you, repeated until you believed it. And now it echoes in your mind like a command line. Say your name out loud. Feel how thin it is. How artificial. A label, worn like skin. Now imagine hearing it in another person's mouth. Do you feel more real? Or less? You believe you are singular. But every experience you've had, every trauma, every joy has been refracted through a million external forces. Language, culture, family, trauma, biology, media. The you that emerges is not a sovereign entity. It is a collage, and worse, it is a collage, held together by observation. Have you ever noticed how your behavior changes when you're alone for too long? How your mannerisms dissolve. Your voice softens or vanishes entirely. That's because the self is not internal. It's performed, constructed for others, reflected back at you through interaction. You need the mirror to see your face. So what happens when there's no one left to reflect you? Solitary confinement doesn't just induce boredom. It dismantles identity. People forget who they are. They hallucinate themselves. Some lose language entirely. The I begins to decay without an audience. So what, then, is the self? A performance for others? A scaffolding built out of perception, waiting to collapse the moment no one looks? Let's push one step further. Meditation, done deeply and long enough, reveals an uncomfortable truth. That the watcher, the observer of your mind, The sacred witness is not a solid thing. It is not a light in the cave. It is just another thought, a process, something that arises in the theater and pretends to be sitting in the audience. You are not a self watching your experience. You are experience dreaming of a self, and even that isn't permanent. The brain dies. The body dies. Consciousness flickers. There is no preserved core. There is no soul kept safe inside. There is no pilot waiting to be extracted. You will end. And when you do, the entire illusion ends with you. And yet here you are, clinging to the idea of a you that can still be saved, that some part is untouched, that some quiet center remains. But tell me, if the self is just a recursive echo inside a cage of perception, then who exactly is reading this sentence? The mind that cannot touch the world. You wake up, open your eyes, and believe you're touching the world. You believe that the colors, shapes, sounds, and textures around you are real, that the light streaming through your window is the sun, that the weight of your body on the chair is contact, that your voice fills the room when you speak. But you're wrong. You've never touched the world. Not once. You've only touched signals, filtered, translated, delayed, and distorted by the biological prison you call a body. Let's begin with sight. You think you see the world as it is. But your retina doesn't receive whole images. It receives raw data. Light waves, frequencies, and not all of them just a thin, pathetic slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. Infrared, invisible. Ultraviolet, invisible. Gamma rays, X-rays, radio waves. You're blind to them all. Your brain takes that sliver of light, inverts it, compresses it, and stitches it together with two-dimensional retinal signals to simulate depth. It adds color, not because color exists, but because your mind assigns it. There's no red in the real world. Just a wavelength. Your brain paints red over it, like a desperate artist trying to make sense of chaos. So what you see is not the world. It is a rendering, and that rendering is built entirely inside your skull. The philosopher Immanuel Kant called it the phenomenal world, the world as it appears to you, and said it could never grant access to the noumenal world, the world as it truly is. You're locked inside your perception. You see not what is, but what your nervous system permits you to see. Sound, just vibrations in air. Your ears detect pressure differences and translate them into signals, which your brain then interprets as melody, language, or pain. But without ears, sound does not exist. There is no music in space. There is no crash in the forest unless something hears it. Touch? No better. When you press your hand against an object, atoms do not actually contact each other. The electrons in your hand repel the electrons in the surface. You're feeling resistance, not contact. You've never touched anything. You've only felt electromagnetic repulsion, taste and smell, cruder still mere chemical reactions interpreted as flavor or memory. And even they are illusions of stability. Your taste buds reset every 2 weeks. What you like, what you crave, changes without your consent. So what is your body? A sensory filter, a gatekeeper, a prison guard whispering lies in your ear. And your brain, the so-called master organ, is worse. It lives in darkness, silence. It has never seen light, never heard sound, never touched a single thing. It sits in isolation, interpreting electrical signals and hallucinating reality. You are not in contact with the world. You are in contact with a hallucination. Neurologist Carl Friston proposed a predictive processing model of the brain. It doesn't receive reality and then interpret it. It predicts what reality is likely to be and then fills in the gaps. The world you see is not based on what's there. It's based on what your brain expects to be there. This is why you can hallucinate faces in clouds, hear your name in static, see movement in shadows. It's why eyewitness testimony is disastrously unreliable. Why people report seeing things that never existed. Your brain's predictions override your perception. You don't perceive reality. You negotiate it. Now, consider dreams. When you dream, your brain constructs entire world's faces. Voices, cities, logic, emotion, without any external input at all. You can fall in love, commit murder, feel shame, run from monsters, all inside the sealed chamber of your skull. And in the moment, it feels real. Then you wake up. And how do you know this isn't just another dream? There's a syndrome called Charles Bonnet syndrome, where people who lose their vision begin to hallucinate vividly. Full landscapes, people, animals, not shadows, detailed visions. Their brains, deprived of input, invent a world rather than sit in the void. Your brain would rather lie to you than admit it. Knows nothing. So you trust your senses, but they are untrustworthy. You believe you touch the world, but you do not. You assume that the colors and sounds you experience are out there, when in fact they are entirely in here, projected onto a screen you can't even see. And that screen? It's inside the simulation engine you call the self. But if all perception is prediction, if all contact is filtered, if all sensation is hallucination, then where is the world? Does it exist independent of you? Or is your entire life a neural animation, stitched together second by second from signals you'll never verify? And if you cannot reach the world, if you cannot prove that what you see or hear or feel corresponds to anything real, then what exactly is real? And if you can't answer that, what are you? The language that controls the cage. Believe you use language. You believe it is a tool. That you choose your words, form your thoughts, express yourself. That speech is the extension of your mind, your internal essence leaking outward in sound and symbol. But this is not how language works. Language is not a tool you use. It is the cage you live inside. You never chose your language. It was given to you. Before you could walk, before you understood, before you had the chance to resist, English, Urdu, Spanish, whatever was spoken around you, seeped into your brain like dye into water, staining everything. Every thought you've ever had was colored by a structure you didn't create, and that structure defines the boundaries of what you can even imagine. This is not metaphor. This is the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the linguistic theory that the language you speak determines the way you think. In its strongest form, it implies linguistic determinism, that your ability to conceive of an idea is limited, literally limited, by the grammar, vocabulary, and metaphors of your language. If your language has no future tense, can you truly imagine the future? If your language doesn't differentiate between blue and green, can you really see them as separate? Studies suggest the Himba people of Namibia, whose language has fewer color terms than English, struggle to distinguish between certain shades of blue and green that English speakers instantly separate. Their eyes function the same. Their brains don't. Now pause. If a word you don't know cannot be imagined, then what else have you never been able to think? What has been erased by the silence in your vocabulary? Every belief you hold, justice, love, identity, purpose, is built from language. But language isn't neutral. It carries metaphors, contradictions, assumptions baked into every sentence. You say, I am angry, as if the anger is your identity. You say, I fell in love, as if love is a trap. You say, I have time, as if time is a possession. But these metaphors shape reality. They become reality. George Lakoff showed that Americans frame arguments about immigration using metaphors like invasion or flood. Once those frames exist, every thought you have on the subject follows the metaphor. You aren't analyzing. The world you're moving pieces inside, a linguistic game that's already rigged. And if every concept in your mind is shaped by metaphor, by frame, by grammar, then you are not thinking. Language is thinking for you. Now step deeper into the trap. Have you ever tried to think without words? Pure awareness, pure thought. Most people can't. Try for 10 seconds to observe your mind in silence. What happens? Words creep in, phrases, narration. The voice returns. The loop restarts. You don't think in silence. You think in sentences. In the rules of a system you didn't write. And worse language doesn't just trap thought. It creates false certainty. The moment you put a name to something, you kill its ambiguity. You say tree, and 1,000 individual living beings collapse into a single word. You say love, and 1,000,000 contradictory emotions are squeezed into 4 letters. You say God, and whatever lived beyond description becomes a puppet of grammar. Words flatten, they simplify, they erase the real, but without them, you cannot speak, you cannot share, you cannot even think. So you remain in the cell, a prisoner who guards the bars because they are written in beautiful prose. Language is the engine of your internal monologue. The voice you thought was you, but it's not your voice. It's a composite of all the phrases you've ever heard, all the sentences, drilled into you by parents, teachers, preachers, media, books, advertising, internet. You are a remix, a patchwork of borrowed thoughts. You've never had an original sentence. You've only rearranged the inherited ones. So when you say, "This is who I am," what do you mean? What words are you using? Who gave them to you? Why? Do you trust them? And what happens when the words fail? When you try to describe grief, and all you can say is, "It hurts"? When you try to describe love and fall back on cliches? When you stand before death and realize there is no sentence? God will make sense of it? Language breaks. And in that breaking, you glimpse the truth, that words were never enough. That thought was never yours. That meaning was always a story crafted after the fact, shaped by grammar, limited by vocabulary, bound in syntax. You never had the key. You are the lock. And if you cannot speak truth without distorting it, if every word betrays the thought, if every sentence is a mask, then what lies behind the silence? The history you never lived. You were told the past is known. That history is recorded, cataloged, archived. That the story of how we got here is printed in books, preserved in documentaries, debated in classrooms. You were taught names, dates, causes, consequences. You believe the world has a spine made of time, firm, factual, traceable. But history is not memory. History is not truth. That history is survivorship. It is the echo of power, the voice that spoke loudest, the version that won. The Roman Empire called their enemies barbarians. The barbarians did not write books. The Romans did. So we learned to say, civilized and savage with confidence. The British Empire wrote about their civilizing mission. The enslaved did not write in libraries. They were forbidden to. So we learned to call colonization progress. The story of the past is not what happened. It's what remains. And what remains was curated. Consider this. More than 99.999% of human life has left no record. The ancient cities we know, they're anomalies. The bones we display in museums, selected fragments. The stories of your ancestors, your literal ancestors, are lost beneath layers of war, fire, flood. Silence. Your identity is built on the bones of people you cannot name. And even the stories that survived have been rewritten. Take the Library of Alexandria, said to contain the knowledge of the ancient world. Thousands of texts, theories, observations, languages. Gone, burned, or maybe not burned, maybe stolen, or dispersed, or destroyed slowly by disuse. We don't even know how we lost it. The uncertainty is the story. Or consider the Dark Ages, a term historians now reject. Why? Because it wasn't dark. It was just dark to us. Records faded, knowledge fragmented, and so we projected ignorance backward, as if silence equals stupidity. But silence is not absence. It is erasure. Even modern history lies by omission. Ask, who invented the telephone? And you'll say Alexander Graham Bell. But Elisha Gray filed a similar patent hours earlier. Bell's version 1. That's the name you remember. Who decided which one mattered? Ask who discovered America. Columbus. He never set foot in what is now the United States. He thought he was in India. Entire civilizations already lived there. Complex cultures, laws, languages. But history tells you he discovered something. Because discovery is not about finding. It's about claiming. Ask why you remember some wars and not others. Why you know the Holocaust, but not the Congo Free State, where King Leopold of Belgium murdered an estimated 10 million people in pursuit of rubber and ivory. Why is one carved into your curriculum and the other left to academic whispers? Because memory follows power. Curriculum follows convenience. History follows narrative, and narrative lies. Every time you say, the Civil War was about states' rights instead of slavery, you're repeating a propaganda revision. Every time you say, the West was one, you are participating in a linguistic genocide. Every time you celebrate an Independence Day, you are ignoring whose independence ended that day. And your personal history. No better. Your family told you stories, who they were, where they came from, what they endured. But those stories were filtered through shame, nostalgia, error. Your grandparents left things out. Your parents misremembered. You filled in blanks. With emotion, you think your life sits atop a known past, but it stands on a graveyard of edited memory. Even nations forget. Entire genocides are erased from textbooks. Languages vanish every year. In 100 years, your own life, your photos, your digital posts, your most sacred memories will likely be unretrievable. Hard drives corrupt. Servers vanish. Eyewitnesses die. And if one day the only trace of you is a legal document or a photo without context, then what version of you will survive? The clean one? The incorrect one? Or none at all? You never lived the past. You inherited a story of it, a story shaped by political need, emotional comfort, cognitive bias. Even memory science tells us that eyewitnesses are unreliable, that people confabulate, fabricate, forget, that the more confident someone is about their memory, the less likely it is to be accurate. So if collective memory lies, and personal memory lies, and documentation decays, and narratives shift, then what is history? Is it the truth we record, or the myth we choose? And if you were built by that myth, constructed in the image of a story told by liars, written by victors, filtered by bias, distorted by time, then who exactly are you? If the foundation of yourself is a fiction, the freedom you were taught to feel you believe you choose. You believe you decide. You believe in freedom because you feel it not as theory, but as sensation, the moment-to-moment awareness that you could have done otherwise. You choose the you. Words you say, the path you take, the people you love or leave. You believe your will is free. But what if freedom is the most convincing illusion of all? Start here. You didn't choose your brain. You didn't choose your genes, your language, your birth country, your first trauma. You didn't choose your temperament, your sensitivity to shame, your capacity for joy. You didn't choose your desires. So what are you choosing from? The libet. Experiment, perhaps the most unsettling of all neuroscience, showed that your brain initiates decisions before you become consciously aware of them. A full 350 milliseconds before you feel the intention to act, your brain has already begun the process. The choice happens before you know it. Your consciousness is not the pilot dot. It is the narrator dot. Later studies confirmed and extended this. Electrodes. Detecting patterns of brain activity could predict a person's choice several seconds before they reported deciding. Not vaguely, accurately. Your decisions are measurable before they are felt. So what is the feeling of freedom? It is the mind justifying what the body already began. You move your hand, and then you say, I decided to move my hand. But the decision wasn't yours. It was already in motion before you arrived. So where is the self in that? Now consider the illusion of alternative possibility. You say, I could have done otherwise. But that claim requires two assumptions: that the universe allows alternate futures, that you are not bound by the laws of cause and effect, but physics has no room for could. The state of the universe in this moment is determined by the state of the universe before it. Your neurons fire because of electrical and chemical patterns shaped by everything that came before. Genes, environment, experience. If you rewind the universe to this instant and press play again, you will choose the same thing. There is no branching, just unfolding. Even in quantum physics, often misunderstood as proof of randomness, the indeterminacy does not imply freedom. Randomness is not will. A coin that flips differently each time is not choosing. You are not choosing. You are reacting, and the reactions are patterned, predictable. Your preferences can be mapped. Your behavior can be anticipated. Corporations know what you'll click. And before you do, your smartphone knows where you'll go next. Your GPS predicts your destination based on day and time. You think you're improvising. You're not. You're following a script one so deep, you forgot it was written. And what about morality? Do you choose to be good? Studies show that people with damaged ventromedial prefrontal cortices regions associated with emotion struggle to make moral decisions. Not because they're evil, but because the machinery for empathy has been compromised. So tell me, if morality depends on brain function, and brain function depends on biology and experience, then who is choosing to be good? Or take addiction? Do addicts choose to keep using? Or are they trapped in a neurochemical loop, their reward system hijacked, their frontal lobes weakened? You judge them, but if he had their genes, their childhood, their trauma, their brain, you would be them. Free will collapses under scrutiny. It's an emotional security blanket, but let's suppose for comfort you still cling to the idea of a chooser, something deep inside that evaluates, weighs, selects. And answer this: where is that chooser? Is it the prefrontal cortex? That can be damaged. Is it your soul? Show me where it begins and ends. Is it your conscience? That shifts under mood, hunger, fear. Is it your reason? Then why does reason fail under pressure? Even when you think. You're making a free choice when you agonize over what job to take, who to marry, what to believe. Your decision emerges not from a sovereign will, but from an unconscious web of emotion, habit, memory, and social programming. Your rational thought is just the final excuse your brain gives for what it already wants. Now feel the horror. Every political belief, inherited, every preference, shaped, every desire, implanted, every rebellion, modeled after previous rebellions, packaged for consumption. Even your idea of freedom was taught to you. A child raised in total isolation would not cry out for liberty. They would cry out for connection, for touch, for relief. Freedom is not innate. It is ideological. And what about punishment? If no one truly chooses their actions, If every crime is the result of circumstance plus neurology, then what does? Justice mean? Are we punishing people? Or brains? Are we locking away guilt or damaged machinery? And if so, do we deserve any of our praise? Do we deserve our pride? So you cling to the sense that you're in control, that you mean well, that you could have done otherwise, but you couldn't, and you didn't. You are not the author. You are the unfolding of a sentence you didn't write, in a language you didn't choose, speaking thoughts that were given to you before you could speak, and yet you say, I am free. But if your every breath, every word, every move, every love, every rage, every thought is the consequence of everything that came before, then what part of you was ever free? The death you keep surviving, you don't believe you're going to die, not really. You say the words. You understand the biology. You've watched funerals, whispered condolences, felt the echoing silence when someone vanishes. But when it comes, to you, death is a theory, a concept, a future event, not a present certainty, because if you truly believed it, you wouldn't be breathing so calmly now. You live inside the denial of your extinction. It's how you function. Ernest Becker called it the denial of death, the subconscious mechanism by which the human psyche suppresses its awareness of mortality. Not because death is mysterious, but because it's absolute. You are not afraid of pain. You are afraid of non-being dot, and the mind cannot process non-being dot. Try right now to imagine what it means not to exist, not sleep, not silence, not blackness, nothing, no thought, no perception, no awareness of absence, not even the idea of death, because you wouldn't be there to have it. You can't do it, because consciousness cannot comprehend its own non-existence. And yet, it will occur. Your death is guaranteed. Not just your body, your mind, yourself, your voice. This sentence, there will be a moment, the last moment where everything ends, and you will not witness it. And the horror is, you die every night and call it sleep. Consider this. Every time you fall into dreamless sleep, your consciousness vanishes. You disappear. You don't observe the absence. You don't remember the vanishing. You're gone. Every morning, you reawaken as if you resumed. But there's no guarantee it's the same you. This is the ship of Theseus, applied to the self. If your body replaces every cell over time, if your memories shift, if your personality changes, if your brain forgets entire years, are you still you? Now extend the metaphor. If you fall asleep and never wake up, but a copy with the same memories wakes up tomorrow, did you survive? Would you ever know the difference? You already experience partial deaths. The child you were is gone. The version of you from last year is gone. People say, I've changed, as if there's a continuity, but that continuity is memory. And memory is a fabrication. The philosopher Derek Parfit argued, identity is not what matters. What matters is psychological continuity. But that continuity is always partial. It fades. It fractures. It lies so that you that fears death will never face it. Because by the time death arrives, you will already be gone. But let's make it worse. Your body can die in pieces. Your hippocampus can fail, erasing new memories. Your frontal cortex can deteriorate, erasing reason. Your amygdala can burn, erasing emotion. You remain alive, but less and less yourself. This is dementia, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, stroke, degeneration. Death is not a cliff. It is a slow erosion, and you survive it one layer at a time. But sometimes it comes fast. Aneurysm, cardiac arrest, car crash. One moment you are, and the next you are not. And yet, statistically, your brain will remain active for several seconds, After your heart stops, it will know it's dying. So maybe you will be aware of the last breath, the last thought, the flickering of synapses as the lights go out. Maybe you'll feel the collapse. Maybe you'll want to scream, but the body will already be silent. Or maybe it'll just be a glitch, a frozen reel, a moment looped endlessly in the final biochemical twitch of a dying brain. A private hell of replayed panic, over and over. And if there's no afterlife, no soul, no continuation, no transcendence, then you are not going anywhere. You are ceasing. People say, passed away, or gone to a better place, or resting. But the language is camouflage. Death is not travel. It is not sleep. It is not rest. It is the end of experience. The end of noticing. The end of the sentence. You are not present for your beginning. You will not be present for your end. And that makes the idea of life a cruel parenthesis and interruption in the void. So you distract yourself with routine, with trivialities, with stories. You act like death isn't rushing toward you every second, that your cells aren't dividing with a built-in countdown, that your telomeres aren't shortening, that your arteries aren't stiffening, that your brain isn't already shrinking. You say, I'll think about it later. But death is thinking about you now. It is watching you breathe. It is inside you. It is part of you. It is your final inheritance. So let me ask you, if you vanish completely, if the self dissolves, memory rots, body returns to soil, if there is no soul, no rebirth, no return, then what is all this scrambling, this reaching, this screaming into the abyss? For what exactly do you think survives you? The consciousness that lies to itself. You believe consciousness is real. It's your awareness. Your inner experience is not only undeniable, but trustworthy. That your thoughts reflect yourself. That your feelings mean something. That your intentions matter. You believe the very act of awareness is sacred, irreducible, and true. But what if consciousness is a trick? A user interface designed to hide what's really happening underneath? Consider your smartphone. You tap an icon and an app opens. You don't see the code. You don't see the millions of voltage gates switching inside its silicon heart. You don't know how the circuit boards speak to each other. You don't need to know. The icon is enough. Consciousness works the same way. According to cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman, your conscious experience is not an accurate reflection of reality. It is a fitness interface, an evolutionary hallucination, not a window to the world, but a cartoon optimized for survival. Just as icons on your desktop aren't photos of electricity, your thoughts aren't pictures of truth. They're shortcuts. Survival didn't require you to know the world as it is. It required you to make decisions quickly, to reproduce, to avoid pain, not to understand. So you evolved a mind that hides the truth of its own machinery. You feel anger, but you don't see the neurotransmitter imbalance that caused it. You feel attraction, but you don't see the decades of conditioning that sculpted your preferences. You feel proud, but you don't see the invisible scaffolding of privilege and coincidence that held you up. You don't know yourself. You interpret yourself, and your interpretation is based on guesses. Now enter the illusion of introspective access. You believe you can explain your choices. Why you bought the shirt. Why you trust your friend. Why you feel anxious today. But in studies, subjects were manipulated into making different choices, then asked why they chose what they did. And they confidently invented reasons that weren't true. They didn't lie. They didn't know. Because the conscious mind is not the origin of thought. It is the public relations department. It rationalizes. It explains. It creates stories. You think. You're the captain of the ship. You're not. You're the narrator running behind the ship, yelling what direction it's going and pretending You were steering all along. You are a confabulation engine, and that engine is broken. Your mind is filled with biases confirmation. Bias, hindsight bias, availability heuristics, Dunning-Kruger effect. You selectively remember things that flatter you. You distort your own past to maintain a sense of narrative. You filter out contradiction. You have to. Otherwise, your sense of self would collapse. And sometimes, even when it does, you don't notice. Consider anosognosia, a condition where people suffer brain damage and lose the ability to move an arm, or speak, or recognize faces. But when asked, they insist they are fine. They cannot see their own deficit. Their brain literally prevents awareness of its own failure. And yet they speak with confidence, with identity. Now ask yourself, how much of your own mind might be broken? And what if the system that detects the break is the very system that's broken? Your sense of self depends on continuity, on the illusion that your thoughts belong to you, that your mind is unified. But it's not. The modular mind hypothesis says that your brain is a collection of specialized subagents, each with different priorities. One wants sugar. One wants social status. One wants sleep. One wants to die. They compete. They negotiate. Sometimes one wins, sometimes another. You call the winner me. But that me is different from the me that wakes up at 3 a.m. craving meaning, or the one that wants to run away, or the one that cries at music for reasons it cannot name. There is no single consciousness, just the illusion of narrative. Unity. You believe in your stream of consciousness, but the stream is stitched together after the fact. In truth, it's fragmented, subject to gaps, glitches, missing time. Have you ever driven a familiar road and arrived with no memory of how you got there? Have you ever said something and wondered who inside you decided to say it? You weren't watching. You never were. You don't experience the world in real time. There is a delay. The brain takes time to process input, to construct the moment. You are always living in the past, and even that past is altered by your expectations. You remember things before they happen. You feel déjà vu. You experience flashbulb memories that are entirely fabricated. Your awareness is not a light. It is a lagging simulation. So if consciousness is delayed and divided and constructed and inaccurate and easily deceived, then what is it, and why do you trust it? What you call I is a self-model built by a brain that cannot see itself, a loop that believes it is a line, a hallucination that insists it is truth, a ghost that thinks it's a mirror. So ask yourself if consciousness is the mask, and you are inside the mask, but the mask makes itself. Then where are you in all of this? And if you disappear, how would you ever know? The reality that doesn't need you. You wake up each morning believing the world is still there. The floor meets your feet. The walls stay upright. The sky remains above, the gravity below. You trust the persistence of reality, its permanence, its quiet continuity. You imagine that even while you sleep, reality waits for you, like a loyal dog at the door, but reality doesn't need you. And worse, there's no way to prove it exists without you in it. This is the hard solipsism problem, the philosophical dilemma that no amount of evidence can prove the existence of anything outside your own consciousness. You could be dreaming. You could be hallucinating. You could be a brain in a vat, fed electrical signals by a machine. The moment you begin to verify reality, you're already relying on your perception. But your perception is flawed, constructed, distorted. We've established that. So every test you run to prove the world exists is performed from inside the dream. René Descartes tried to escape this doubt. He doubted everything: senses, memory, body, and concluded, I think, therefore I am. But he never proved the world. just the thought of a self. But what if even that thought is simulation? Modern physics provides no comfort. At the smallest scales, the world stops behaving like the solid, stable thing you imagine. Particles are not particles. They're probability waves. They don't exist until measured. They exist as possibilities. This is the infamous observer effect. Not in the misused sense of consciousness creates reality, but in the hard, horrifying truth that quantum states collapse upon observation, that prior to measurement, they are not definite. They don't have position. They don't have momentum. They are clouds of uncertainty, and the moment we look, they snap into place. This leads to the double-slit experiment, where photons behave as waves or particles depending on whether they're observed. When unmeasured, they interfere like waves. When measured, they choose a single path. This is not a trick of equipment. It is repeatable. Foundational dot, and no one fully understands why. What are we observing if it doesn't exist until we observe it? And what does it mean to observe? Does it require consciousness? Is the universe collapsing into reality every time you open your eyes? Then what was it before you looked? You want to believe reality is stable, but all evidence says it's relational, not absolute. Einstein's relativity proved there is no universal now. Time and space stretch, warp, bend, depending on your speed and mass. Two observers can disagree about whether two events happened in the same order. There is no master clock, no shared stage, just stitched perspectives dot, and if time isn't stable, and matter isn't solid, and particles don't exist until watched, then what is this reality you're standing in? Maybe it's a rendering, a simulation, a dream in a loop. The simulation hypothesis proposed by Nick Bostrom argues that if it becomes possible to simulate consciousness in the future, and such simulations are run often, then it is statistically more likely you are in one of those simulations than in the original base reality. You scoff. But the mathematics doesn't. If consciousness can be created by computation, and those computations can be copied, then why would you assume you're the first version? You say, but it feels real. So does a dream. So does a hallucination. So does love. So does grief. Feeling is not a metric for truth. It's a function of the interface. And if this is a simulation, who is running it? A civilization? A machine? A god? Or is it recursive simulations inside simulations, each unaware of the level above? And if the simulation ends when you die, then is your death the shutdown? Or were you never running anything to begin with? But maybe the scariest possibility isn't that the world is fake. Maybe it's that the world is real, but completely indifferent. You want meaning, pattern, justice, karma, purpose, but physics offers none. The laws of Oz, thermodynamics don't care about your pain. The strong nuclear force doesn't know you exist. Entropy eats everything: stars, planets, bodies, memories. You are a flicker of organization in an expanding sea of decay. The universe isn't evil. It isn't good. It is silent. And that silence is terrifying because it means there's nothing watching, nothing judging, nothing rewarding, nothing remembering. You scream into the sky, and the sky doesn't answer because it doesn't know how you are the only one who hears yourself. So if the world disappears when you close your eyes, and reality bends under observation, and the universe never promised you anything, then what exactly makes it real? The others who were never there. You believe other people are real. You see their faces. You hear their voices. You touch their skin, read their words, feel their judgments. You construct your life around them: lovers, enemies, mentors, strangers. You shape your identity by contrast. You are you because you are not them. But what if the people in your life were never real? Not illusions in the sense of fiction, but illusions in the sense of unverifiable. Philosophers call it the problem of other minds. And it has no solution. You can observe behavior. You can hear words, track eye movement, measure skin temperature. But none of that proves the presence of consciousness. You assume the person across from you feels pain, joy, fear, guilt, because you feel them. But that assumption has no logical foundation. A machine could mimic those reactions. A mirror could reflect them. A shadow could copy them. But they would be empty. And yet, you project minds into others automatically. It's how you survive. It's called theory of mind, the evolutionary shortcut that lets you imagine intentions in others, predict their actions, empathize with their pain. But the truth is, you've never seen a thought in someone else, only the performance of one. Consider locked-in syndrome, a condition where a person is fully conscious but unable to move or speak. For years, they may be misdiagnosed as brain dead, lying motionless, forgotten, screaming silently in a coffin made of skin. But eventually, someone notices a flicker, a blink, a scan, and they say, "I was here the whole time. Now invert it." What if someone you love is locked out, animated, speaking, laughing, but not truly present, not conscious? What if they're a philosophical zombie, a being that acts exactly like a person, but has no internal experience? You can't disprove it. You never could, and maybe neither can they. Even the people closest to you, the ones whose pain makes your stomach twist, are black boxes. You never enter their minds. You build models. You guess. But they may be empty or simply different beyond recognition. Your mother's love, her anger, her approval, you never felt them directly. You interpreted facial muscles, tone, behavior. You assigned meaning. You projected yourself onto her. And the deeper you love, the deeper the projection. Your best friend is a version of you. Your spouse is a reflection of need. Your enemies are invented threats, shaped by your own insecurities. There is no pure other. Only constructs. Social media proves this. You interact with avatars, highlights, algorithms. You fill in the blanks with assumptions, tone, narrative. You think someone is wise because they posted a quote. You think someone is evil because they made a joke. You think someone loves you because they used a heart emoji. But you don't know them. You never did. Even face to face, you misread constantly. Studies show we're terrible at detecting lies, at reading emotion accurately, at distinguishing sincerity from sarcasm. Your mind rushes to fill in the ambiguity with stories that protect your worldview. And if someone contradicts it, you say, they changed. But maybe they didn't. Maybe they were always someone else. Or maybe they never existed the way you imagined. Now consider the terrifying experiments in interpersonal neurobiology in studies using fMRI. People react to others' pain only if they perceive that person is like them. The brain lights up differently when a stranger suffers. Empathy isn't universal. It's tribal. Conditional. So your compassion? Selective, programmed, tied to identity, not truth. And what about the false consensus effect, your belief that most people think like you? It's an illusion, repeatedly disproven. You overestimate similarity. You assume understanding. You walk through the world imagining shared minds. But the more you probe, the more you find difference. Other people do not think like you. They do not see what you see. They do not feel what you feel. You say, but we connect. Do you? Or do? You simply trade symbols, language, gesture, metaphor, and pretend that resonance is proof of shared experience. But language is limited. Memory is distorted. Emotion is unverifiable. Maybe all relationships are hallucinated symmetries. Maybe all intimacy is a guess that never gets confirmed. And yet, You crave them. Why? Because your sense of self requires. The other dot, without them, there's no reflection, no context, no narrative. That's why solitary confinement destroys people. Not because they are tortured, but because they are unseen. They begin to vanish. Identity evaporates without witnesses. Consciousness implodes in isolation. So you need them. Even if they're not real. You need their eyes, their stories, their imagined selves. You surround yourself with phantoms. Because without them, you'd have to see yourself. So ask, if every person in your life is a version you constructed, if no other mind is provable, if love is projected, empathy is tribal, and conversation is symbol manipulation, then have you ever met another person? Or have you been utterly alone all along? The time that devours itself, you believe time moves forward, that the past is behind you, fixed and dead, that the future is ahead, unknown and unfolding, that you move through time like a traveler on a road, step by step, moment by moment, toward some inevitable destination. But time does not flow. It devours, and it's already swallowed you whole. You say, time passes, but that's metaphor. You feel time is change, but you cannot see it, touch it, prove it. What you call time is the decay of order, entropy, the slow bleeding of structure into chaos. Your body ages, your memories blur. Your breath, once automatic, becomes a countdown, but there is no clock in the sky, no cosmic arrow. Einstein shattered the idea of universal time. In relativity, simultaneity doesn't exist. Two observers moving at different speeds can disagree about which events happen first, and both are correct. Time is not a single thread. It's a fabric, warped, stretched, curled. There is no master timeline. Only overlapping perspectives. And in block universe theory, all of time, past, present, future, exists simultaneously. Like a landscape, fixed, immutable. You do not move through it. You are embedded in it. Every moment that was, or will, BE is equally real. You never left the past. You never arrive at the future. You are frozen in a 4D sculpture of yourself experiencing one slice, one now, because that's all your mind can handle. But the rest of you, the infant, the elder, the final breath is already there, already waiting. So where is choice, if every moment already exists? Where is freedom, if your future is just as carved as your birth? Now consider time perception, how your brain plays with the passage of moments. When you're bored, time stretches. When you're terrified, time slows down. When you're joyful, it vanishes. These are not changes in the world. They are failures of your neural chronometer. Even your sense of the present is an illusion. You think now is instantaneous. But your brain stitches together input over approximately 500 milliseconds. You're always half a second behind reality, and you feel that as immediate. You live in a lag and call it life. And your memory? Fragile, warped, unreliable. The more you recall an event, the more you rewrite it. You're not remembering the moment, you're remembering the last time you remembered it. Your past is a story you edit with every retelling. So if the past is fiction, and the future is already written, and the present is a neural patchwork, then what is time? And what does it want from you? Your life is not a straight line. It is a looping recursion of habits, fears, routines. You wake, eat, work, scroll, sleep, again and again. The sun rises not to progress, but to reset. Your calendars are cages. Your clocks are commandments. You check the hour, not because you need it, but because you're trained to. You are a servant of time, and it is your executioner. Every second, your cells decay, your organs strain, your mind frays. You are not traveling through time, you are being consumed by it, and you are taught to be grateful dot, to make the most of it, to seize the day, to live in the present. But how can you live in something that doesn't exist? The present is not a thing. It is a transition, a crack between what no longer is and what never yet was dot. So when people say, be here now, where exactly is here? And when is now? Buddhist philosophy calls time an illusion, that the self, chained to memory and expectation, creates suffering by clinging to the unreal. But even that recognition does not unbind you. You still decay. You still rot. You still die dot, whether time is real or not. It ends you just the same. And the future, that sacred hope, it's not yours. It's not waiting. It's not open dot. It's a horizon that retreats faster than you walk. You dream of milestones, of arrivals, of better days. But every step forward is a step closer to dissolution. And even your dreams decay in retrospect. Your happiest moments now feel distant. Your victories fade. Joy curdles into nostalgia. And nostalgia is the grief of time pretending to be sweet dot. So tell me, if time is not flowing, if moments are illusions, if memory lies, if the present is a glitch, if the future is already carved, then what is this thing you're losing every second? And if it was never yours, why does it hurt so much to watch it go? The self that was never whole, you say, this is who I am. You speak your name. You list your traits. You point to your body, your memories, your history. You believe in yourself as a singular thing intact, continuous, indivisible. You say I and expect it to mean something. But there is no whole self. There never was. Only fragments pretending to be a mirror. You are a collage of contradictions stitched together by memory. And necessity. The self is not a monolith. It is a process, a looping script, recursive and unstable. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, set of brain regions that activate when you're not focused on anything else. That's your self, the thing that talks to itself when nothing else is happening. But that voice isn't unified. It shifts tone. It contradicts itself. It speaks in different registers depending on context. You are not one mind. You are a committee, and the vote is never unanimous. One part wants revenge. Another part wants peace. One part wants to disappear. Another wants applause. And the you that exists in this moment will die and be replaced in the next. Not metaphorically, biologically. Your neurons fire in different patterns. Your gut bacteria change. Your attention shifts. You mutate, but your story doesn't, because you are addicted to narrative. You construct continuity out of chaos. You retroactively declare, this is who I've always been, even though you've contradicted yourself 1,000 times. You ignore the moments that don't fit the arc. You justify behaviors that betray your values. You forgive yourself for things you condemn in others. You are not honest. You are coherent. And coherence is a lie. Take the split brain experiments. When patients had their corpus callosum severed, disconnecting the left and right hemispheres, two sides of the brain operated independently. In one experiment, the right hemisphere, which doesn't process language, was shown an image and reacted with action. The left hemisphere, which does process language, had no idea why, but invented a reason. I got up because I was cold. A complete fabrication. Delivered with full confidence. The self is a storyteller that doesn't know the plot. And it doesn't need to. It just needs to feel in control. You are constantly rearranging your past to make sense of your present. You forget things that don't fit. You remember events that never happened. You absorb other people's memories. You invent childhoods. You rewrite trauma. You filter out complexity to protect identity. You are not remembering. You are fictionalizing. And when trauma breaks that fiction, When something happens that doesn't fit the self begins to splinter. Dissociation, amnesia, personality fractures. Your mind protects itself by cutting pieces off, because a cohesive self cannot survive contradiction. So it amputates the unacceptable. But what is left out is still you, the rage you hide, the envy you suppress, the desires you condemn, the memories you pretend aren't yours. They are still inside you, watching, waiting, leaking through your choices. You wear a mask, but the mask has no face behind it. Even your body betrays the illusion of unity. Interoception, the perception of internal bodily states, is often inaccurate. You misinterpret your heartbeat, your hunger, your tension. Your conscious mind lags behind what your body already decided. You are a puppet with no puppeteer. And what about roles? You are different people in different places. You speak one way to your boss, another to your lover, another to yourself in the mirror. Which one is real? Which one is you? All of them. None of them? Your core identity is just the role you play most often. And even that changes. Studies show personality traits aren't stable across time. Your values shift. Your preferences evolve. Your beliefs crumble. What you think of as your essence is really a statistical average of behaviors over time. And even that average can collapse under stress, grief, psychosis, trauma. So tell me, if you are not your past, if you are not your future, if your memories are false, if your thoughts are fragments, if your values change, if your roles shift, if your biology lies to itself, then what exactly is this you that you keep insisting is real? A name? A feeling? A voice in your head? And if the self was never whole, then what exactly have you been trying to protect? The meaning that never existed. You believe your life means something, not just because of religion, or family, or career, but because without meaning, you'd fall apart. Meaning is your anchor, your compass, the invisible skeleton that holds your thoughts upright. You tell yourself that you matter, that the things you do have weight, that your suffering leads somewhere, that your love builds something. But what if meaning is just another defense mechanism? What if it was never real? Consider the death of teleology, the idea that things exist for a purpose. For millennia, humans believed everything had an end goal. Rivers flowed to nourish the land. Stars moved to signal the divine. People were born to fulfill destinies. But science killed purpose. Evolution isn't goal-oriented. It's random variation and selection. Your genes don't want anything. They survive, not because they mean something, but because they don't get killed. Your existence isn't designed. It's a statistical accident. You are the unplanned byproduct of indifferent forces. Cosmic radiation, gravitational collapse, organic chemistry, blind replication. You arose not from purpose, but from physics that got lucky. And yet you ask, why am I here? But that question assumes there's an answer. There isn't. You're looking for pattern in static. You're carving words into fog. The universe doesn't answer because it wasn't asked. It doesn't have ears. It doesn't have language. It doesn't care. And when you look for signs, coincidences, repetitions, symbols, you're feeding the apophenia machine in your head. The brain that evolved to find connections, even where none exist. You see faces in clouds, meaning in dreams, destiny in random numbers. You interpret everything as about you, because if it's not about you, then you don't exist in the story. But there is no story, just a sequence, a list of unconnected events strung together by a desperate narrator. You. Now think of the things you assign meaning to. Your job? Replaceable. Forgotten after retirement. Your achievements? Obsolete with the next generation. Your family? Grieving until they too are gone, your legacy, lost to entropy, buried beneath digital noise, burned with the sun. And your memories? Private, never truly shareable. The most meaningful moment of your life felt only by you. And even you will forget it someday. Now consider the heat death of the universe, the final destiny of all things. As entropy increases, energy will dissipate, stars will die, matter will dissolve, black holes will evaporate. There will be no structure left to perceive anything, no witness, no thought, no awareness. Only a silent, featureless equilibrium, nothing. Will matter because there will be no mind to matter to. This is not pessimism. This is physics. So what are your morals, your dreams, your passions, when viewed from the timeline of eternity? Less than vapor, less than noise, less than the gap between two radio pulses in a dead galaxy. You say, but meaning is subjective. And yes, you create it. But creating meaning is not the same as discovering it. A game invented to distract you from death isn't truth. It's anesthesia. You wrap yourself in symbols, flags, songs, names, rituals, pretending they transcend you. But they don't. They were made up, just like everything else. And even the idea of subjective meaning collapses when the subject itself is unstable. If your self is fragmented, if your preferences change, if your memories lie, then what? Does meaning to you even mean? What happens when the meaning you invented no longer fits? When the child dies? When the job is lost? When the prayer goes unanswered? You spiral, because the scaffolding collapses, and you remember that it was always paper, drawn in pencil. In the dark, some turn to existentialism to claim that meaninglessness is freedom, that we get to create purpose, that absurdity is liberation. But even that is performance, because if you truly believed that nothing mattered, you wouldn't be speaking. You wouldn't be pretending. You wouldn't be here. The truth is, you still want it to matter. You still crave the myth. Because if your life is just atoms in motion, if your suffering is just neurochemical friction, if your joys are just electrical flickers in temporary meat, then what is left? If meaning never existed, and you created it only to cope with its absence, then what is the thing you've been living for? And what would happen to you if you finally admitted that it was all pretend? The memory that remembers nothing, you trust your memory. You treat it like a recording, a vault, a thread of continuity stretched across time. You think it grounds you, defines you, protects you from chaos. You say, I remember, as if those words summon truth, but memory is not truth. It is fabrication, not occasionally. Not under stress. Always. Your mind was never a camera. It was a storyteller, and a bad one. Consider the work of Elizabeth Loftus, who demonstrated how easily false memories can be implanted. People can be convinced they were lost in a mall as a child, that they hugged Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, that they witnessed crimes they never saw. And once the memory is seeded, it becomes indistinguishable from reality. You don't remember events. You remember your last memory of them. Each recollection rewrites the past. Each repetition distorts. Each act of remembering erases and replaces. The more you revisit a memory, the more you corrupt it, the more certain you feel, the more likely it's wrong. Now ask, how much of what you remember ever actually happened? The Mandela effect, a collective misremembering of public events, demonstrates this on a social scale. You remember a famous logo a certain way, a line from a movie, a death, a face. You would swear it was one way, but the evidence says otherwise. And the more you argue, the more you cement the falsehood, because confidence has no correlation with accuracy. Your brain is pattern completion software. It fills gaps, invents transitions, smooths rough edges. Have you ever looked at a photo from childhood and remembered. The moment only to realize later that your memory came from the photo itself? Now consider this. Most of your life is forgotten. You lived entire days you will never recall. Spoke sentences you'll never hear again. Felt things you couldn't even name now dissolved. Your timeline is not a line. It's a flicker. A sparse constellation of disjointed moments connected only by the illusion of continuity. And the moments you do remember? Biased, selected, exaggerated. Your first kiss, your worst failure, the trauma, the joy. These weren't necessarily the most important events, just the ones that struck hardest against the soft walls of consciousness, just the ones your brain couldn't forget, because forgetting them would break the illusion. So your memory isn't optimized for truth. It's optimized for survival, for identity maintenance, for narrative stability. You remember betrayals longer than kindness. You remember shame more vividly than joy. You remember pain in sharper detail because your brain wants to protect you from its recurrence, even if it means torturing you forever with echoes. But even pain is twisted. The peak end rule shows that you don't remember experiences accurately. You remember the peak, the most intense moment, and the end. A painful experience that ended gently is remembered more fondly than one that was shorter but ended harshly. Memory rewrites suffering. So even your own agony cannot be trusted. What about identity? If who you are is shaped by what you remember, then who are you when your memories shift? The elderly with dementia don't become someone else. They lose their memory scaffolding, and the self collapses. But even without disease, you forget your former selves every year. You no longer remember exactly how your 8-year-old self saw the world, or your 17-year-old self, or the person you were last January. That person is gone. You remember fragments. You mistake echoes for substance. But their thoughts, their sensations, their fears, erased. You are not a person with a memory. You are a memory pretending to be a person. And the worst part? You can't tell what's real. Try this. Think of a moment you are absolutely certain happened exactly the way you remember it. Now go ask someone else who was there. Compare. Watch the cracks appear. Even shared memory doesn't match. Because we each remember our version, and we argue as if the other must be lying. But maybe you both are. And what about the memories you never formed? The things your brain protected you from? The trauma it buried so deep it dissolved your sense of time? You say, it's in the past. But memory doesn't care about time. It resurfaces at will. Out of sequence, a smell, a sound, a word, and suddenly, now is then. So what is memory? A film? A photo? A record? No. It's single quotes, a hallucination with a timestamp, an afterimage that insists it's real, a ghost that thinks it's you. So ask yourself, if every memory is a fiction, if every recollection rewrites the self, if forgetting is the rule and remembering the glitch, if you've invented half your story, then what exactly do you mean when you say, I remember who I am? And when your last memory fades, what part of you, if any, will remain to know it ever existed? The language that lies for you, you think in words. You dream in phrases. You define your reality through language, constructing thoughts, describing memories, building selfhood from sentences. You believe that words are tools of clarity, that they point to things, that they represent the world accurately. But language doesn't reveal truth. It murders it. Every word is a symbol, not a thing. A proxy. A crude sketch of a reality too complex to be contained in sound. The word love isn't love. It's a cage you put around 1,000 conflicting experiences. Self is a noise that tries to represent a system of recursive processes. Reality is a placeholder for a chaos you cannot hold. Language reduces the infinite to the utterable. And the moment you speak it, it becomes false. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be." Silent. He meant that the most profound things, consciousness, existence, death, being, are beyond articulation. Words collapse under their weight. They become noise pretending to be knowledge, but you keep speaking, because silence is unbearable. You use language to make reality obey. You name things to tame them. You call something depression and pretend it is now understood. You say, "I'm fine," and hope it becomes true. You call yourself strong, broken, introverted, enlightened, as if words are mirrors rather than masks. But labels are limitations. They reduce what they claim to capture. You say, "I'm anxious." But what is anxiety? Is it the racing heart, the spiral thoughts, the fear of the future, the shame of the past, the tension in your jaw, the inability to breathe? Each one. A different world, and all flattened into 6 letters. Language allows you to speak about things you do not understand, as if you do not, it offers the illusion of control. But control is an act of violence. Now consider how language shapes perception. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis suggests that the structure of a language influences the way its speakers think. In some languages, there is no word for left or right, only cardinal directions. These speakers always know which way is north, even indoors. In others, the concept of future is not in front of them, but behind, because it is unknown. Your very perception of time, space, color, agency is dictated by the grammar you were born into. You think language helps you think, but maybe it traps you in thought you didn't choose. And when you speak to others, what do you actually share? Words? No. You share assumptions. You rely on a shared dictionary that is always a little different in each brain. When you say, "I love you," you assume they hear the same weight you feel. But what if to them, love is conditional, transactional, temporary? You both say the same words and mean different universes. Communication is a gamble. Most of it fails. And the failures are invisible. You misinterpret tone. You miss subtext. You infer intentions that were never there. You hear what you expect, not what was said. Every conversation is a game of telephone through damaged speakers. And then there's the deepest, betrayal. Language doesn't come from you. You were given words, trained in them, shaped by them before you could resist. Your internal monologue isn't your voice. It's the echo of your culture, your parents, your teachers, your algorithms. When you think, you are quoting ghosts, and yet you trust those thoughts because they arrive in your voice, but it's a borrowed voice, a script you didn't write, a vocabulary installed without your consent. So what happens when you lose language? People with aphasia, after strokes, can no longer name objects, form, sentences, or recognize grammar. But the world doesn't disappear. The self doesn't vanish. Something remains. Something beneath the words. Maybe that's the real you. The you that cannot be said. But we don't live in that silence. We drown it in speech. We build identities out of metaphors. We think that naming a feeling helps. We forget that the name is not the thing. And worst of all, language hides lies inside truth. That it lets politicians kill with euphemisms. Lets corporations deceive with slogans. Lets religions manipulate with stories. Lets individuals hide from themselves behind phrases like, "I'm okay," or "it's fine," or "that's just how I am." So ask, if language shapes your thoughts, and thoughts define yourself, and the language wasn't chosen by you, and the words lie, limit, and distort, then what is the self that speaks? And if it finally went silent, would there be anything left to say? The death that happens every moment you think death is an event, a final heartbeat, a last breath, a flat line on a screen. Something that happens once, at the end. You believe it's a wall, a single, sharp, irreversible point. You fear it. You prepare for it. You try to delay it. But you think it's far away? It's not. Because death is not a singular moment. It's a process. And it has already begun. Every cell in your body is dying. Constantly. Millions per second. You shed your skin monthly. Your gut lining renews itself every few days. Neurons die and are replaced. Your immune system cannibalizes its own soldiers. You are a graveyard in motion. And what's worse, your body isn't even yours. It's a colony. Trillions of microbes live in you, on you, around you. You depend on them. They digest your food, train your immune system, modulate your mood. You are outnumbered by your passengers. And when you die, they will feast on your corpse without hesitation, because death is not sacred. It's ecological, necessary, efficient. The cells of your body follow the script of apoptosis programmed cell death. Without it, you would be a monster, a mass of unchecked growth, a tumor with eyes. Death is what keeps you intact. You are alive because parts of you die by design. But that's just biology. What about yourself? Your mind is built on neural entropy. Every thought you have destroys a prior state. Every decision eliminates infinite alternatives. Every new belief kills the one that came before. Memory fades. Identity shifts. Love withers. Personality traits dissolve over time. What you call you is a current, not a core. So what exactly dies when you die? You think it's the whole you. But that you never existed in one piece. You've been dying piece by piece since birth. First your infant self, then your childhood beliefs, then your early ideals, then your illusions, then your certainty. You don't face death at the end. You carry it. You are made of loss. And you think there's still time? That you'll do it later? That one day you'll finally become the person you were meant to be? Time is not a gift. It's a predator. The moments you delay don't wait for you. They disintegrate. The book you didn't write, the apology you didn't make, the truth you didn't say, they died with no funeral, no closure, just silence. And one day you will be silent too. You imagine your death will be significant, that people will remember, that something of you will linger. But let's be honest, most people are forgotten within 2 generations. Their names dissolve into databases. Their graves go unvisited. Their words fade in obsolete formats. Their photos lose meaning. Their secrets die unspoken. You will be deleted, naturally and completely. And perhaps you want to believe in something after, a soul, a field, a continuation. But even if consciousness somehow survives death, will it still be you? Without memory? Without language? Without identity? If what survives is unrecognizable, then who survives? And if nothing survives? Then what was all of this for? Religions offer comforting lies. Secularism offers cold shrugs. You are trapped between denial and despair. And in both, you avoid the real truth. You are already dying. This moment is a loss. This breath is unrecoverable. You speak as if you're living. But really, you're negotiating with decay. And it will win, because even if you avoid every accident, cure every disease, upload your mind, transfer your consciousness, merge with machines, conquer aging, the heat death of the universe waits. Nothing survives forever. Not atoms, not minds, not even information. Everything ends. So the question was never how you die. It was, how many times have you already died and called it living? The reality you will never touch. You think you perceive the world. You look, you hear, you touch, You taste. You trust your senses. You believe that reality flows into your eyes, through your skin, into your mind. That you are connected to what exists, that what you experience is the world, but you don't see reality. You see a simulation. And worse, you built it yourself. Your brain has no access to the outside world. None. There is no tiny person behind your eyes watching a screen. Your brain is encased in darkness, sealed inside bone, fed only electrical signals from sensory neurons. It has never seen light, never touched an object, never heard a sound. It interprets electrical data and hallucinates a world. You live inside that hallucination, and you call it truth. This is not metaphor. This is neuroscience. You are not looking. At this screen, you are experiencing a model your brain built of this screen based on raw signals from your retinas, interpreted by layers of visual cortex, colored and shaped and corrected by prior experience. The image you see isn't out there. It's in here. Projected. Edited. Assumed. You are trapped inside a sensory cage. And your cage is tiny. The electromagnetic spectrum is vast, but you see a sliver. You call it visible light, as if it's special. It's not. It's arbitrary. Bees see ultraviolet. Snakes detect infrared. Dolphins use sonar. Your human senses are narrow guesses, evolutionarily useful, but wildly incomplete. The world as it is, you will never touch it. What you experience is reality for humans, not reality itself. Just like a bat's world is shaped by echolocation, or a shark's by electromagnetic pulses. Each species lives in a different phenomenological bubble. Yours happens to involve sight, sound, and language. But that bubble is not the whole. It's not even close, and your brain cuts even more. Your eyes take in 10 million bits of data per second. Your brain lets in maybe 50. It discards the rest. You focus on what you expect, what matters to your goals, what fits your narrative. The rest of reality? It goes unnoticed. You filter out the real world just to survive. And when your expectations are violated, your model glitches. That's why magic tricks work. Why optical illusions fool you. Why false memories feel real. Why eyewitnesses are unreliable. Why your dreams seem convincing while you're in them. Because your brain is less interested in truth than in coherence. And coherence is a lie. You trust your senses? Let's test that. Do you hear your own name more clearly in a crowd than anything else? That's not reality. That's salience bias. Do you see shapes in clouds? Faces in inanimate objects? That's pareidolia. Do you ignore background noise until someone points it out? That's perceptual suppression. You don't perceive what is. You perceive what fits. And it gets worse. Your perception of time is warped. Your sense of space is estimated. Your sense of self-location, where you think you are, can be hacked. By virtual reality in seconds. In the rubber hand illusion, people feel ownership over a fake hand after just minutes of synchronized stroking. In full body illusions, people can be made to feel like they've left their body entirely. So what is you if your body is negotiable? And if your senses can be hacked so easily, what happens when you trust them too much? Reality becomes a consensual hallucination, agreed upon by other hallucinating minds. We say a color is red. But red doesn't exist in nature. It's a brain reaction to certain wavelengths. You and I could see red differently and never know it. We say an object is solid, but matter is 99.9999999% empty space. Solidity is an electromagnetic illusion. We say time move forward, but physics allows for time symmetry. The direction of time may be a feature of consciousness, not of the universe. Everything you experience is a guess, and you live inside the consequences of At guesswork. Now think of virtual reality. Artificial environments that can already fool. Your senses. Entire worlds indistinguishable from the real, soon accessible in headsets the size of glasses. Eventually, with neural implants, indistinguishable from life itself. What then? What happens when your reality can be edited, paused, duplicated, rewritten? How will you know it's real? And how can you be sure you're not already in one? If reality is always experienced through a filter, if your senses are a simulation generator, if your brain cares more about coherence than truth, if you live inside a model and mistake it for the world, then ask, what is this thing you've been calling real? And if reality is forever out of reach, what, exactly, are you trying to wake up from? The freedom that never existed. You think you are free. You say it with pride. You believe your choices are yours. That you weigh, evaluate, decide. That there is a you behind every action, a will, a self, an agent pulling the strings. You think? Freedom means control, but you have no control. And you were never free. Start with the readiness potential. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Lebet showed that brain activity predicting a decision begins hundreds of milliseconds before a person becomes consciously aware of deciding. Later experiments extended that to several seconds. You think, now I choose, but your brain already did. Your sense of free will? A lagging narrative. An afterthought. You are not choosing. You are rationalizing, and you are not the cause of your actions. You are the witness, pretending to be the author. The conscious you is the last to know. But maybe you think freedom isn't about momentary choices, it's about possibilities, about having options. The ability to choose between A or B. But where did those options come from? Your genetics, your upbringing, your culture, your education, your hormones, your traumas, your fears, your brain structure, your neurochemistry, your socioeconomic position, your language. Every variable of your choice was preloaded. You didn't choose your preferences. You discovered them. Why do you like what you like? Why do you fear what you fear? Why do you repeat the same mistakes over and over? Because choice is not a cause. It's an effect. Now consider the illusion of control. In experiments, people believe they influence random events. Pressing buttons they think change outcomes when they don't. Gamblers believe in luck streaks. Managers believe their strategies shape success even when it's due to randomness. Humans need to feel agency. But need does not equal truth. And what about responsibility? If you had grown up with their brain, in their body, in their context, with their traumas, you would have made the same decisions they did. Every criminal, every tyrant, every liar. You don't choose against your wiring. You are your wiring. So what is left to be blamed? Or praised? Or held responsible? And when you change, what changed you? Pain, love, shame, loss, insight, circumstance. You choose those? Of course not. You don't evolve. You adapt. And adaptation is not freedom. It's compliance with external pressure. Now consider how easily your decisions are manipulated. By framing, by priming, by architecture, by algorithms, by lighting, by scent, by repetition, by scarcity, by fear. Advertisers use your attention against you. Politicians use your tribalism. Apps use dopamine loops. Social platforms exploit outrage. Marketers sell identity. Your choices are predicted, shaped, sold, and monetized. You are the product of psychological triggers you don't understand and won't notice. You aren't choosing. You're responding. But maybe you think freedom's deeper, spiritual, that there is a you outside the system, a soul, A spark. A watcher behind the eyes. But even that watcher, how did it arise? Was it chosen? Or was it the final mask your brain wears to keep the illusion intact? Every religion that promises free will contradict itself. If God is all-knowing, then your future is known. If it is known, then it is fixed. If it is fixed, then you are acting out a script. And your freedom is prewritten obedience. But perhaps you don't believe in a deity. You believe in autonomy, in choice, in the ability to say no dot, then say no dot to desire, to comfort, to validation, to sleep, to oxygen dot. See how quickly biology overrules freedom. You don't choose your hunger. You don't choose your exhaustion. You don't choose your fear when the lights go out. You don't choose the lump in your throat when grief arrives. You are a hostage of your biology, carrying the illusion of freedom because your brain needs to believe in it. Otherwise it can't plan, predict, justify, or forgive. But tell me, if your choices are predictable, if your thoughts are precursors to action, not causes of it, if your values were installed, if your preferences are products, if your agency can be hacked by buttons, shapes, and ads, if your sense of will is a narrative glued onto decisions already made, then what is this freedom you say you have? And if you are never free, what, exactly, is the thing you're trying to become? The time that never moved you live in time. You wake to clocks. You sleep to calendars. You plan your life in years. You remember in hours. You regret in seconds. Everything you are your thoughts, your choices, your identity is chained to the rhythm of before and after dot. You say, this happened, then that. I used to be, and I will be. But time is not what you think it is. And it may not be anything at all dot. Your experience of time is constructed dot. It feels like a river, constant, flowing, one-directional. But it's not dot, it's a hallucination, created by your brain dot. Physics doesn't need the now. The laws of the universe don't distinguish past from future. The equations work forward or backward. There is no objective flow. Just a block of four-dimensional structure in which every moment, past and future, already exists. You are not moving through time. You are frozen in it. Think of it. If time passes, relative to what? There is no cosmic clock ticking outside the universe. No universal moment. No metaphysical second hand. You don't experience time. You experience change and mistake it for motion. But even change is relative. Einstein's theory of relativity showed that time moves at different speeds depending on gravity and velocity. Astronauts age slower. GPS satellites must correct for temporal distortion. A second is not a second everywhere dot. Your now is not someone else's now dot. So what is the present? You think it's the thin edge of reality, the real moment, slicing between past and future. But your brain doesn't work in instants. It averages time dot in neuroscience. The specious present is the window of integration, roughly 2 to 3 seconds, over which your brain compiles sensory data into a single experience. You are always slightly behind reality, assembling a movie. From frames that already happened, even your present is a memory dot, and memory itself distorts time. Trauma stretches it, boredom slows it, joy condenses it. Anticipation fractures it. Fear repeats it. Time is not measured by clocks. It's measured by attention. Think of a dream. Hours seem to pass, but the clock ticks only once. Time in dreams isn't linear, nor is it linear in meditation, or flow, or grief. So what is real time? If your perception of it changes with mood, focus, chemistry, context, then time is not an object. It's a state. Now consider Julian Barber's theory of timeless physics, that change is real, but time is not. He proposes that the universe is a collection of now's complete configurations, like still frames of a film reel. The illusion of movement comes from the order our minds impose. All moments exist. None are moving. You are a flicker of structure in a vast mosaic of stillness. Your identity depends on time. You need cause and effect. You need stories, narratives. You say, I was hurt, so now I protect myself. I learned, so I grew. I failed, so I changed. But what if those stories are inverted? What if you didn't change because of the past, but invented the past to explain the change? Your brain constantly rewrites history. It fills gaps. It reshapes sequences. It rearranges causality to preserve the illusion of continuity. You remember a chain of events, but they may not have occurred in that order. You feel like you've grown over time, but maybe you're just forgetting who you were. If time is an illusion, then so is growth, so is healing, so is guilt, so is progress. You aren't moving forward. You're repeating the same loop, interpreted in new ways. Your future is not a destination. It's a prediction model built from corrupted memories. And your past? It's a story told from the perspective of the present moment, which itself is a delayed interpretation of signals that arrived already too late. So what is time? A sequence of neural events? A feeling of change? A trick of entropy? A human metaphor? And if time isn't real, if you are not moving, if you are just remembering motion, then what exactly are you rushing toward? And if this moment is all there is, why does it keep disappearing? The self that was never there, you believe you are someone, not just a body, a self, an identity, a continuous I that watches, decides, remembers. You say, I think, I feel, I want, as if there's a singular entity behind the curtain, pulling the strings. You think yourself is the anchor of your existence, but there is no anchor, and there is no self. This isn't poetry. This is neuroscience. In split-brain patients whose corpus callosum has been severed, the left and right hemispheres operate semi-independently. One hand buttons a shirt, the other unbuttons it. One eye sees an image, the other denies. When asked why they did something, the patient fabricates a reason believing it, even though the real cause came from the disconnected half of their brain. So who is the I that answers? The self, it seems, is not a unified being. It's a confabulation, a guess, a narrator, and it's late to the story. You think you have a center, but brain imaging finds no single place where the self lives. There is no command post, number, soul chair in the mind. You are made of modules, specialized networks for vision, speech, motor control, memory, emotion. They communicate, sometimes, often poorly. They conflict, compete. They are not unified. You are a committee, not a king. Buddhist concept of anatta no self described this centuries ago. That the self is an illusion created by clinging. That identity is a flame with no fuel. That you are just 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, none of which are permanent, none of which are you. Modern psychology agrees. In Daniel Dennett's model, the self is a center of narrative gravity, a convenient fiction that makes sense of otherwise chaotic processes. You are a story your brain tells itself, a story you mistake for substance. But stories change. So do you. You used to be a child. You believed things you now reject. You loved people you now fear. You dreamed things that make no sense to you today. Your self has been replaced many times, gradually, silently. Like the ship of Theseus, every plank swapped out one by one. If no part of the original ship remains, is it still the same ship? If no part of your former self remains, who are you now? What was preserved? You say, my memories. But we've seen that memory is faulty. We've seen it lies. We've seen it erases and rewrites. You say, my personality. But personality changes with trauma, with age, with neurochemistry, with context. You are kinder to strangers than to family. More honest at night than in the morning. More generous after sleep. More cruel under pressure. You are not consistent. You are situational, Dot. So what is it that remains? A pronoun? A shape in the mirror? A social contract? You think, I am me. But where is the me? Scan your mind right now. Find the self. You'll find thoughts, feelings, sensations, but no thinker. No feeler. No watcher. Only a field of experiences. Arising, changing, fading. You are not behind your experiences. You are the experiences. And when they stop, you stop. Dot. This is what mystics mean by ego death. What philosophers mean by the illusion of the self. What cognitive scientists mean when they say that consciousness is a user interface, not a control panel. The self is a dashboard, not a driver. And once you see that, it falls apart. You are not a solid thing. You are a process, pretending to be a point. A flame that believes it's a candle. Dot. So what happens when the process ends? When the story stops being told? When the modules stop firing? When the attention dissolves? When the memories are gone? There is no ghost to leave the body. No essence to ascend. No you to mourn. Dot. There is only the silence left behind. And the brief echo of a story once mistaken for truth. Dot. So ask, if the self was never real, if you are only a pattern, if identity is a flicker stitched together by habit, then who exactly is the one reading these words? And when you close your eyes, what is it precisely that disappears? The others who are always you. You believe in others. You speak of them, the strangers, the lovers, the enemies. You draw a line between self and other, as if there is a border, as if you are an island, as if your skin is a wall and not a membrane. You say, that's not me, as if the division is obvious, but there is no division. There never was. You are not separate from others. You are a mirror, reflecting mirrors. Let's begin with mirror neurons discovered in the promoter cortex of monkeys and later in humans. These neurons fire not only when you perform an action, but when you see someone else perform it. They are the foundation of empathy, imitation, and identification. When you see someone stub their toe, your pain centers activate. When you hear someone cry, your tears aren't voluntary. When someone smiles at you, you feel it before you decide. The other bleeds into the self biologically. You think you have your own emotions. But emotions are contagious. In crowds, you catch fear. In laughter, you catch joy. In riots, you catch rage. These aren't choices. They are transmissions. Chemical, electrical, viral. You are not a boundary. You are a conduit. Your personality? Built from internalized others. You spoke with your mother's voice long before you had your own. You adopted your culture's morals without asking. You took in the opinions of peers, books, films, algorithms. Every thought you've ever had was influenced by voices not your own. So which part of you is really you? Even your internal monologue is built from language you didn't invent. The you who thinks is a chorus of past conversations. And yet you hate others. You envy them. You judge them. You fear them. But the more you resist, the more you become them. You hate the narcissist until you realize you crave validation. You despise the liar until you notice your omissions. You condemn the coward until you see the ways you avoided truth. The parts of others that disturb you are the parts of yourself you haven't faced. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the repressed parts of the psyche. What you project onto others is often what you deny in yourself. So the enemy you rage against, he is you. Denied. The lover you obsess over, she is you. Idealize. The friend you idolize? They are you, deferred. You see fragments of yourself everywhere, but you name them other to protect your narrative. Yet even your identity depends on others. You are a daughter because someone named you so, a friend because someone calls you that, a citizen, a partner, a rival, a mentor roles, written by someone else. Strip away the relationships, and what remains? A self with no function, a person with no context, a ghost without mirrors. And what? Of the dead? You remember them, grieve them, carry them, but you also become them, their habits, their phrases, their fears, their beliefs. You perform them without noticing. The dead don't disappear. They replicate through you. Even those you've never met shape you. People who wrote books, composed songs, committed crimes, saved strangers. You wear their footprints in your speech, your rituals, your judgments. You live 1,000 borrowed lives. You just call them your own. And when you love someone, you dissolve. Your ego stretches. You speak as we. Their joy becomes yours. Their pain enters your nervous system. You dream with their face. You become, momentarily, a shared mind. Love is the only honest thing we do, because it briefly admits, I was never separate, but it doesn't last, because fear returns. And with it, the delusion of self. So what are you without others? Remove every voice you absorbed, every behavior you mirrored, every wound inflicted by someone else, every compliment, every insult, every role you played to be seen, every boundary you built to be safe. What's left? A flicker, a breath, an unnamed thing that's not really a thing. So ask, if the self was shaped entirely by others, if your mind is a copy of a copy, if your loves, hatreds, and choices are echoes of those who touched you, then who exactly do you think you are alone? And if there is no one else, who will be left to remember that you ever were? The history you never lived. You believe you know history. You recite dates. You name wars. You quote names from dusty textbooks, statues, timelines. You imagine the past as solid a sequence of real events, witnessed, recorded, preserved. You think it explains the present, that it builds the future. But history is not memory. It is not truth. It is not even the past. It is a story told by survivors, filtered, falsified, and rewritten by power. You were never taught the truth. You were taught what was permitted. There is no single past. Only a mass grave of interpretations rotting beneath official narratives. Ask yourself, what percentage of all human experience has been written down? What fraction of those records still exist? How many were erased, altered, mistranslated, misinterpreted? How many truths were never spoken? Aloud? History is a map drawn in blood, with most of the borders added after the battles. You think history is linear, but you live in loops. Empires rise, justify themselves with myths, collapse into ash, and their crimes are rewritten as glory. Tyrants become saviors. Rebels become traitors. Victims become forgotten. The winners write the records, but even they forget. And what of your own history? You believe you remember your life accurately, but memory is a historian with brain damage. Every time you recall a memory, you alter it. You add details that weren't there. You smooth contradictions. You implant beliefs that came later into moments that came before. Your childhood is a dream told in the voice of your present self. Your memories are not stored, they are rebuilt. Each time. They are stories, not evidence. And the stories you're told? They shape what you remember. In one experiment, participants who were told about a false event say, being lost in a mall as a child created a vivid emotional memory of it, even though it never happened. They weren't lying. They weren't confused. Their brain believed it. You are not the author of your past. You are its editor. Now imagine this on the scale of civilizations. How many lies become tradition? How many omissions become sacred? How many atrocities become sanitized? How many voices never made it into the archive? Consider the Library of Alexandria, thousands of scrolls burned, never translated. Entire schools of thought gone. Whole. Worlds of knowledge extinguished by fire and ignorance. And you think history is complete? What about the oral traditions wiped out by colonization? The languages that died without record? The massacres buried under nationalism? The indigenous wisdom erased by progress? You're standing on ruins made of silence. And what history survives is warped. Take the Dark Ages, term invented by Enlightenment thinkers to degrade what came before. In reality, it was a time of innovation, science, art, but the label stuck. And 1,000 minds misremembered. Take the Middle Passage reduced to a statistic. Take the Holocaust denied by many, commercialized by others. Take the partition of India, unspoken by its own descendants. Take the Cambodian genocide, the Rwandan genocide, the Armenian genocide, each minimized by someone in power. How much evil gets rewritten as necessity? And how much good disappears for being inconvenient? You think you live in the future. You live in a museum of propaganda. And what you inherit is not fact. Its fragments cleaned, curated, weaponized. Even the act of remembering is political. Whose statues stand? Whose names are on streets? Whose faces are on the money? Whose suffering is in textbooks and whose is erased? You think you're informed. You're indoctrinated. So ask, if your memories lie, and the records lie, and the silence lies louder than the words, then what was ever truly real? And if the past is always being rewritten, what makes you think the present is any different? The truth that was engineered. You believe in truth, not always, not perfectly, but deep down, you believe there's something real, something knowable, something solid beneath the noise. You tell yourself that facts exist, that logic works, that, with enough evidence, enough time, enough clarity, will converge on what's true. But truth is not found. It is engineered, constructed, framed. And almost always for a purpose. Let's start with the foundation. You don't experience truth. You experience beliefs. Your brain filters reality through survival, not through accuracy. In fact, research suggests that perfectly accurate perceptions would be a biological disadvantage. Donald Hoffman's evolutionary models show that organisms that see reality as it is lose to those who see only useful fictions. Your senses are not truth detectors. They are interfaces like icons on a desktop. You don't see voltage. You see a folder. You don't see photons. You see a color, and you don't live by truth. You live by narratives. Your political views, your moral codes, your national identity, your sense of justice. All stories, all truths shaped by framing. Now consider the backfire effect. When shown evidence that contradicts a deeply held belief, most people double down. The contradiction is processed as a threat, not as information. The more intelligent you are, the better you become at rationalizing your bias. So truth doesn't spread through facts. It spreads through alignment, through emotion, through repetition. What is true becomes what is believed by enough people for long enough. And those beliefs? They're injected, public relations firms, think tanks, state propaganda, algorithmic, curation. Entire teams design the truths you live inside. During the Cold War, the CIA funded art, literature, and academic institutions to sway cultural perceptions. They manufactured truth through ideas. Tobacco companies suppressed cancer research for decades funding their own truths. Tech companies today hire cognitive scientists and ethicists, not to tell the truth, but to make their truth irresistible. You are not uncovering truth. You are choosing which system to let install it in you. And you think science is immune? Science, the great pillar of objectivity, is still made by humans. Humans who chase funding, who publish for tenure, who fear peer ridicule. Over 70% of researchers in psychology admitted they couldn't reproduce each other's results. Medical journals are riddled with ghost-written articles sponsored by pharma. Entire paradigms collapse when incentives change. Not when truth arrives. Science is not pure. It's a method, a language game. And it too is shaped by what can be funded, what can be said, what can be sold. Even logic has limits. The Gödel incompleteness theorems show that any logical system complex enough to include arithmetic will contain true statements that cannot be proven within the system. Logic, too, has blind spots. In perception, your brain fills gaps. You see what you expect to see. You ignore what doesn't fit. In one study, people failed to notice a gorilla walking through a basketball game because they were told to count the passes. You can be staring at the truth and not see it because it's outside the story you were trained to look for. So what is truth? The opposite of a lie? But even lies are context dependent. A lie in one culture is a politeness in another. A deception to one person is a coping mechanism to someone else. And what about truth in history? We just saw how the past is curated. Truth is political. Truth is profitable. If truth is a tool, then whose hands hold it? Your education system? Your government? Your religion? Your newsfeed? Your influencers? Every source of truth is a gatekeeper. Every gatekeeper has an agenda. And even when you find the truth, you immediately reframe it. You mold it into your worldview. You say, I knew it. You fit it into the self you believe exists. But if you shape the truth to fit your story, then what story was ever shaped by truth? Ask yourself, if truth is engineered, if your beliefs are installed, if your perceptions are gamed, if your rationality is post hoc, if even your logic has blind spots, then what does it mean to say, I know? And if you don't even know what truth is, how will you ever know when you've lost it? The meaning that always escaped you. You believe your life means something. You cling to this. You must. That all your struggle, all your pain, your dreams, your loves, they matter. That there's a purpose behind it. A shape that the thread you follow leads somewhere other than the grave. But meaning is not found. It is not revealed. It is manufactured under pressure, out of fear. And deep down, you already know it. Start with this. Where does meaning come from? From achievement? But all achievement fades. From love? But love ends. From legacy? But legacies are forgotten. From morality? But morality contradicts itself across cultures and centuries. Then maybe from God? But which one? Yours? The one your parents believed in? Or theirs? The one they killed in the name of yours? Or the silent ones? The ones who never answered? You don't know. You only inherit meanings. You never choose them freely. You didn't decide what life means. You were handed a mythic pre-packaged reason. Be good, be productive, be remembered. Raise a family, obey the laws. Leave the world. Better than you found it. But what is better? Who defines it? By what standard? Even progress is a lie. More comfort, more tech, more speed, but are you more fulfilled? Suicide rates rise. Loneliness spreads. The more connected you are, the more invisible you feel. What does meaning mean in a world where you can simulate love, automate art, outsource thought? You are swimming in signals and dying of significance. Victor. Frankl, in his search for meaning in the Holocaust, suggested we must create meaning through suffering. But what if your suffering is silent? What if no one hears it? What if it ends with you? Is a life meaningful if it leaves no mark? Absurdism doesn't comfort you either. Camus said, "We must imagine Sisyphus happy." But Sisyphus isn't real. You are. And your boulder is heavier every year. You look for meaning in patterns. The number you keep seeing. The feeling you had before the phone rang. The sign you swear was sent just for you. But this is apophenia, the brain's tendency to impose structure on chaos. It's the same mechanism that sees faces in clouds. You are not decoding the universe. You are hallucinating importance. You want life to matter. But you're living in a universe that doesn't care you exist. It made stars, galaxies, black holes. Entire civilizations could be swallowed by the void, and nothing would flinch. Your species has been here for a cosmic millisecond. Your name will not survive another century. Your thoughts vanish the moment they stop being spoken. Even if you become great, even if your name is etched in stone, eventually the stone will erode. The language will die. The sun will burn out. The atoms will disperse. And the idea that you once mattered will itself become meaningless. You think that's nihilism? That nothing matters? No, it's worse. Things do matter to you. You feel love. You feel loss. You build dreams. You break. You weep. It matters so much, and it still won't last. That is the real despair. That meaning is real, and it still disappears. That everything that shaped you won't survive you. You are never looking for meaning. You are looking for guarantee. But there isn't one. So now, ask yourself, if meaning is not inherent, if every story is a defense against chaos, if your beliefs were installed and your gods were inherited, if your victories fade and your pain leaves no echo, then what exactly have you been clinging to all this time? And when you finally let go of it, what remains to keep you from disappearing? The death you've already begun. You fear death, sometimes loudly, sometimes quietly, but always. You fear the silence it promises, the absence, the erasure. You fear the end, as if life is a film reel that stops spinning, as if everything will go dark and you will be gone. But death is not coming. It's already here. It began the moment you began. Your cells are dying as you read this. Apoptosis, necrosis, natural attrition. Billions of your cells vanish every second, replaced imperfectly, incompletely. By the time you finish this paragraph, part of you will be gone. You are not a fixed being. You are a slow collapse, animated by habit and inertia. And this collapse is not tragic. It's mechanical. Your telomeres shorten. Your mitochondria decay. Your brain shrinks. Your cartilage erodes. Your dopamine receptors diminish. The body does not wait for a funeral. It retires you by degree. You are not heading toward death. You are rehearsing it, daily. But maybe you think death is when the heart stops. Is that the line? Then ask, why? Does consciousness vanish before the heartbeat ends? Why does brain activity flicker out in stages? Why can people be revived, sometimes after minutes, without pulse and report nothing? Near-death experiences, electrical noise, dream residue, a brain gasping for meaning as it loses oxygen. You hope for eternity, but you can't even sustain a dream for more than a few minutes without forgetting it. What would you do with forever if you can't hold on to a thought for more than a breath? Maybe you think death will be like sleep, but sleep returns. Death, DOESN, single quotes T. And in deep sleep, you are not there. There is no dream, no memory, no self. So ask, if death is like dreamless, sleep timeless, sensationless, then why do you fear it? You fear it because you want to be remembered. You think a memory is a second life. But memories rot. They're distorted, reframed, politicized. You become a symbol, and then a whisper, and then a nothing dot. No one remembers your great dash, great dash, great dash grandmother. Nor will they remember you. You think you'll leave something behind. Art, children, wisdom. But every legacy becomes anonymous in the end dot. And if it doesn't, it becomes burden. Idolized, misunderstood, exploited dot. So maybe you want death to be meaningful, a good death, a peaceful one. But you won't experience it. You will only vanish dot. You won't know it's happening. You won't remember it. You won't process it dot. It will be the end of processing itself dot. And if you fear death, because it erases the self, remember, the self never existed. You are mourning a hallucination dot. Now consider this. You are already living someone else's death. Every time you forget something you once loved. Every time a part of your childhood disappears into fog. Every time you abandon a dream, kill a hope, silence a version of yourself, you are performing a small funeral. You are a graveyard of your former selves, and death is not an intruder. It is your oldest companion dot. It was there when you shed your first tooth, when you broke your first belief, when you watched someone walk away and never return, when you realized time was irreversible. You don't need to die to feel death. You already do dot. Comes in the silence between thoughts, in the moment after the music ends, in the pause after goodbye, in the blank stare when memory fails. And when death does come finally fully, it will not ask you. It will not wait for you to be ready. It will not care what you've built, who you've loved, or what you've feared. It will arrive like it always has. As part of you so ask, if death has already begun, if you've died 1,000 small deaths, if you are a process decaying in slow motion, then what exactly are you trying to preserve? And if the part of you that fears death is also dying, then who will be left to feel the loss? The memory that was never yours. You trust your memory, not blindly, maybe, but deeply. You believe that what you remember is a map distorted, yes, but still yours. You believe that your past is made of moments you can revisit. You think of memory as a mirror, but your memory is not a mirror. It's a collage, a lie told in your voice, a reconstruction made out of broken fragments, stitched together to feel whole. Start with this. Memory is not retrieval. It is reassembly. Every time you recall something, your brain reconstructs it, like a puzzle made of melting wax, like a file that is overwritten every time it is opened. You are not pulling the past from a shelf. You are rewriting it based on who you are now. This has a name: reconsolidation. A process where memories, once retrieved, become malleable. They change. And they don't change back. So your past is not fixed. It is warped by every telling, every thought, every emotion, every agenda. And worse, your brain fills in gaps without telling you. You don't remember details. You remember the emotion, the meaning you've attached. Then you build around it, inventing causes, scenes, words, faces. People confess to crimes they never committed because false memories can be planted. In controlled experiments, subjects can be made to believe they were lost in a mall as a child, that they hugged Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, that they caused an accident that never happened. They don't suspect the memory. They suspect themselves because the feeling of remembering is so convincing. But memory doesn't require truth. It only requires coherence. You don't remember what happened. You remember what made sense. And your memory is not private. It's social. Your family, your culture, your religion, they all participate. You inherit stories. You absorb narratives. You repeat what others repeat until you forget what you saw and only recall what you were told. Ask any family, 5 people remember one event 5 different ways. Each story reshapes the others. Your past becomes a consensus hallucination, but it gets worse. Your sense of self is based on memory. You think you are who you remember being. But if the memories are wrong, then who are you? If you forget the event, but remember the feeling, did it still shape you? If you remember an event that never happened, did it still change you? You don't know the difference. You can't. Now think about trauma. Trauma memories are different. They're fragmented, chaotic. They skip logic, chronology. You remember too much or too little. They aren't stories. They're loops. And yet, even those can be distorted. You think healing means understanding your past. But what if your past never happened the way you think? What if healing is just learning to live with the illusion? You are haunted by ghosts of guesses. So what do you actually remember? Faces blurred by time. Words that were never said. Pain you've repackaged. Victories you embellished. Regrets that mutated into caution. Your memory is not the story of your life. It is the explanation you give for your present condition. It is reverse engineered. It is forged by need. You remember what justifies you, what protects you, what explains why you are the way you are, and that justification becomes identity. But if your memories are reconstructed, if they've changed every time you told them, if they were infected by others, if they were altered by mood, time, fear, or suggestion, then what happens when you can no longer trust your past? What happens when you become a myth? And if you are a collection of distorted memories, what remains when even those begin to fade? The consciousness that watches nothing. You think you are conscious. It feels undeniable. You're aware. You observe. You think, and so you believe you exist. You take it for granted that your consciousness is the thing behind the eyes. That it's the stable core. That it is you. But consciousness is not a beacon. It is a glitch, a side effect, an echo pretending to be a voice. Let's start with this. No one knows what consciousness is. Not philosophers, not neuroscientists, not physicists. They only know where it disappears. It disappears under anesthesia. It flickers in coma. It stutters in sleep. It collapses in seizure. And yet it returns, as if it were never quite gone, as if it were always just a simulation rebooting. You think consciousness is continuous, but studies show it's discrete. Process reality in chunks frames like a film reel, each instant stitched to the next, your brain smoothing the gaps. There are delays, gaps, misfires, but you don't notice, because noticing would break the illusion. You believe you are the one doing the thinking. But where do your thoughts come from? Do you choose your next thought? Try to predict the next word your brain will produce. Try to stop thinking. You can't, because thoughts arise. Spontaneously, uninvited, uncontrolled. They emerge from machinery. You don't access. You are not the author of your thoughts. You are their audience. And yet you say, I decide. But decision-making begins before awareness. In Benjamin Libet's experiments, the brain's readiness potential, its signal to act began milliseconds before the subject became aware of choosing. Your brain acts. Then your consciousness claims credit. You're not the captain. You're the spokesperson reading the script. After the fact. Now think of a camera. It records light, but does not see. You're doing the same. Processing stimuli. Pretending. It's a view. But who is the you that sees? There is no central observer in the brain. No inner eye. No Cartesian theater. The visual cortex processes shape. The limbic system processes emotion. The prefrontal cortex processes logic. No one's watching. There is just processing. And yet you feel watched, even in silence, even alone. That sense of self, of being, it's not observation. It's a glitch in representation. Your brain models the world. And among the models, a model of itself. You are a simulation within a simulation. You are the brain's internal cartoon of what it thinks it's doing. Not reality, not agency, just a compressed rendering. A symbolic I. But that model became so detailed, it mistook itself for truth. And so you look in the mirror and say, that's me. But it isn't. It's a representation of a representation. An icon on a screen. Not the code behind it. You aren't conscious of the world. You are conscious of the map your brain generates. An hallucination agreed upon by consensus in memory. Even your sense of being aware is fragile. Under psychedelics, it splits. Under trauma, it fragments. Under time, it dissolves. Under dementia, it disappears entirely. If consciousness were you, you would die with every lapse. But something continues, because consciousness is not the flame. It's the reflection of the fire. In the glass. So ask yourself, if consciousness is not continuous, if it does not choose, if it arises late and claims ownership falsely, if it's a byproduct of machinery, not a driver, then who, exactly, is it that believes they're alive? And if there is no one behind the thought, who is it that's afraid of being extinguished? The time that doesn't exist. You believe in time. It feels so real. You feel its pressure, its rhythm, its punishment. You remember the past, you anticipate the future, and you exist somehow within the present. You wear clocks on your wrists, set alarms, mark anniversaries, celebrate birthdays. But time is not what you think. It is not moving. It is not passing. It is not real. Let's begin with physics. Einstein destroyed the idea of absolute time. According to relativity, time is relative to speed and gravity. Clocks run faster on mountaintops than in valleys. Your GPS must account for time dilation, or it would be off by miles every day. You age differently at different altitudes. You age differently in motion. There is no universal now. So whose time is real? And what if none of it is? In Einstein's own words, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Let that sink in. An illusion. What feels like a river flowing from past to future is just the way your consciousness processes change. The block universe theory proposes that past, present, and future all coexist. That time is a dimension, like space. That everything that ever happened and will happen is already there. You are not moving through time. You are located in a. So what does that make you? A flicker of awareness trapped in a frozen landscape. A needle playing a groove on a vinyl that's already been pressed. Now consider quantum mechanics. In entanglement experiments. Particles influence each other across time. In delayed choice experiments, measurements taken in the present appear to affect outcomes in the past. How is this possible? Because time, as a directional sequence, may not exist at the fundamental level. It is not a basic feature of reality. It is an emergent one. It emerges from entropy, the increase of disorder. You perceive time flowing forward because entropy increases. If entropy ran in reverse, you would see reverse time. There's nothing in the laws of physics that requires time to move forward. It just appears to. Your memory creates that illusion. You remember yesterday, but not tomorrow. So you assume time moves one way. But what if memory isn't passive? What if it constructs the arrow? And what about your life? You think you're becoming something. That you were a child, and now an adult. That you are heading toward death. Every version of you already exists in the block. There is no before or after, only a stack of slices. And memory? It's just the way the current slice contains information about others. There is no future waiting for you. There is no past behind you. There is only now, and even that is a reconstruction. Neuroscientists call it the specious present, brief window, a few seconds wide, where your brain assembles consciousness. You live in a lag, buffered like a live stream. Everything you perceive is slightly old. Your awareness is always too late. Your now is a guess dot, so what is time really? It is a structure of perception, not of reality. It is a habit, a language, a measurement system. It helps you coordinate, age, fear, plan, but it is not real in the way you assume. You do not move through time. Time emerges from you. You are the clock. You are the arrow. You are the fiction. So ask, if time is not moving, if your future already exists, if your past never vanished, if your present is a hallucination, then where are you right now? And if there is no flow of time, what does it mean to say you're running out of it? The free will you never had. You think you make choices. You feel the weight of decision. You agonize. You deliberate. You believe that you could have done otherwise. You tell stories about your decisions. I chose this. I decided that. It was up to me. But free will is not your freedom. It is your alibi. You were never free. You were only unaware of the chains. Start with the brain. Every decision you think you make, every flick of the wrist, every yes or no begins in the unconscious. In experiment after experiment, including Benjamin Levitt's and its many successors. Scientists measured brain activity related to movement and choice before the subject became consciously aware of deciding. Your brain fires, then you decide. Not the other way around. Your will is just a narrator telling the story after the plot has already advanced. Even your desires, you didn't choose them. You didn't choose what you find attractive. You didn't choose your fears. You didn't choose your personality. You didn't choose your preferences, your voice, your traumas, your instincts. They were given to you by genes, by environment, by parents, peers, media, random experience. Everything that makes you you is a reaction to forces you didn't select. If you rewind the universe and run it again, atom by atom, you will make the same decisions. Think the same thoughts, love the same people, make the same mistakes. There is no divergence. Because you are the result, not the cause. But I could have chosen differently. You say no. You only think that because you're imagining a different past. Self-one with different thoughts, feelings, contexts. But that's not you. That's a different configuration of the machine. The version of you that made a mistake is the only version that could have existed in that moment. And yet, we blame ourselves. We punish others. We act as if people should have done better. But how could they? How could the addict have resisted when the craving was shaped by trauma and biology? How could the liar have told the truth when their entire life taught them lying was survival? How could the coward have fought when their neurons screamed for retreat? Blame assumes freedom. But the more you understand someone's story, the more you see they couldn't have done otherwise. So why do we cling to free will? Because it's the illusion that grants meaning. If we're not choosing, then we're not responsible. If we're not responsible, then we can't be praised, or punished, or loved for the right reasons. We want to believe we are authors. But we are just characters writing justifications in margins. Even when you resist your instincts, you're just obeying a stronger one. The desire to be good. The fear of failure. The need for control. There is no you outside the system pulling levers. There is only the system playing itself out. And what about creativity? The artist doesn't choose their inspiration. The thinker doesn't choose their breakthrough. The singer doesn't choose when the melody arrives. These are gifts, emergences, byproducts of a process no one designed. Even the moment of resistance, where you try to disprove this idea, is not a choice. It's an impulse arising from your need to feel autonomous. Your discomfort proves the point. You did not choose to feel it. It appeared, and now you're reacting, So ask, if you never chose your desires, if your thoughts appear without your consent, if your brain acts before you arrive, if your past determines your next step, then where, exactly, is your freedom? And if there was never a you outside the machine, then who is it that claims ownership of the outcome? The self that never was, you say, I with such conviction. I want, I believe, I am. But what is that I? Where does it live? What shape does it take? What substance holds it? You imagine yourself as a unit, a soul, a continuity, a singular thread weaving through your experience. But the self is not a thread. It is a frayed rope, knotted from conflicting strands, unraveling even as you hold it. Let's start with the brain. There is no central command, no single place where the self resides. Instead, your brain is a distributed system modules, communicating, competing, cooperating. There's the limbic system, pushing emotion, the prefrontal cortex, modeling plans, the sensory cortices, translating the world, the default mode network, wandering inward. They don't always agree. Split-brain patients people, whose corpus callosum is severe, display two separate centers of awareness, each with distinct preferences, beliefs, even agendas. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. Which one is you? You are not oneself. You are a committee pretending to be a monarch, and the illusion is maintained by memory, but we've already seen that memory is a reconstruction. So what is left? Just the story. Yourself is not a fact. It's a narrative written on the fly, retroactively edited, emotionally biased, and desperately maintained. When you say, I, you are referring to a summary, not a substance. Now consider. The ship of Theseus. If every plank of a ship is replaced, piece by piece, until none of the original remains, is it still the same ship? Your body has done this already. Your cells replace themselves. Your bones renew. Even your brain rewires. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago. Biologically, mentally, emotionally. So who are you? And if a copy of your mind were uploaded into a machine, same memories, same thoughts, same voice, would it be you? If not, why? If yes, then who dies when you die? The Buddhist tradition says, there is no self, just aggregates, form, sensation, perception, mental formations, consciousness, a process, not a person. Modern neuroscience agrees. There is no you watching from inside. There is only watching and reconstruction. Even your sense of a first-person view is a fabrication. It's just what the world looks like from inside a particular organism with particular limitations. You don't possess a self. You perform. 1. You mirror others. You play roles. You adjust. You become who the situation requires you to be, then pretend that was always you. You are not fixed. You are contextual, relational, reactive, and yet you cling to the idea of being someone. Why? Because without a self, who suffers? Who hopes? Who dies? If you are just a pattern in a temporary machine, then grief becomes meaningless. Achievement becomes irrelevant. Fear loses its anchor. You want to be a soul, but you are only a simulation of coherence. Even the pain you feel now, this discomfort, this dissonance, it arises because your self-model is under threat. You are trying to defend something that never existed. So now ask, if the self is a narrative, if your thoughts are emergent, if your identity is fluid, performative, and recursive, then who exactly is reading these words? And if there is no one inside, the machine, who exactly is it that fears its ending? The others you never understood. You think you know other people. You believe you can read intentions, understand motives, empathize. You look at a face, hear a voice, watch an action, and you build a picture. You tell yourself, I see who they are, but you don't see them. You see your interpretation of them. You see a projection, a version constructed in your mind using fragments, guesses, and assumptions. Let's begin with theory of mind. You possess the ability to simulate the thoughts and feelings of others. But this faculty is flawed. It overinterprets. It misfires. It fills in gaps with your own experience, not theirs. You do not imagine what it's like to be someone else. You imagine you in their situation. You replace their history with yours, their wiring with yours, their pain with your analogies. You don't understand them. You overlay yourself onto them, and then call it empathy. But empathy is limited. Studies show we feel more for those who look like us, who speak our language, who share our culture. Your compassion has boundaries. Invisible walls shaped by evolution, tribalism, and cognitive shortcuts. You think of yourself as kind, but kindness collapses under unfamiliarity. You trust people who smile. You like people who mirror your body language. You admire confidence, not correctness. You reward appearance over accuracy. You are constantly fooled by signals. And those signals? They're performances. Everyone you meet is wearing a mask, not out of malice, but necessity. They have curated their expression, vocabulary, posture. They are signaling safety, intelligence, humor, dominance, submission depending on what they need to survive the moment. You are not meeting a person. You are meeting their defense system. And the same is true of you. You wear roles. You speak differently to a stranger than to a friend. You edit yourself unconsciously. You become who you think they want you to be. So what happens when two masks meet? Misunderstanding. A room full of people, each convinced they're being authentic, each interpreting everyone else through layers of bias, each defending a version of self that doesn't exist. And in between them, silence, because true understanding is rare, maybe impossible. Even language fails. The word love means something different to every person who speaks it. So does truth, hurt, safe, wrong, right. We don't speak the same language. We only think we do. Now look at your memories of others. The way you remember someone is not who they were. It's who they were to you. Filtered through emotion, distorted by time, shaped by what you needed them to be. So when you grieve someone, you are grieving your version of them. And that version may never have existed at all. Even hatred fails to make contact with the real you. Hate who you believe they are. You assign motive. You imagine depth. You reduce complexity to a caricature, so your disgust feels justified. You are always reacting to a fiction. So what does it mean to love someone when you can't truly see them? What does it mean to hate them when you only hate your model of them? And what does it mean to be understood if even you can't fully explain yourself? We are ghosts behind glass. We reach out and our hands pass through. We speak, but the sound bends before it lands. So ask, if every person you've ever known was a simulation in your mind, if every connection was a tangle of signals, biases, masks, and needs, then have you ever truly met anyone? And if not, then who have you been loving all this time? The history that never happened. You believe in history. You were taught that it was the record of what happened, that it's a map of truth stretching behind you, filled with names, dates, events, causes. You think history is what was, but history is not what happened. It's what was recorded. And the record is not neutral. It's curated, censored, rewritten, forgotten. History is not a mirror. It is a weapon. Start here. History is written by the victors, not metaphorically, literally. The ones with power control what is preserved. The ones with printing presses, palaces, armies, alphabets. The rest those who lost, who were erased, who never wrote vanished without a sound. You think you know your past, but most of it is missing. Entire cultures extinct, entire cities buried, entire languages gone. Their knowledge, their beliefs, their truths replaced with silence. What remains is propaganda. The textbooks in your childhood? Sanitized. The museums? Curated? The maps? Drawn with bias. The heroes you worship? Chosen by utility. Consider how nations are built. They require myths, founding fathers, sacred documents, noble wars. Sins are reframed as struggles. Genocide becomes conquest. Oppression becomes civilization. The past is domesticated until it serves the present. And memory? It's not immune. There's something called collective amnesia, a society's ability to forget what it finds uncomfortable. In Argentina, that disappeared. In Turkey, the Armenian genocide. In the U.S., centuries of enslavement reframed as economic development. In Europe, colonization reduced to adventure. We remember what flatters us. We erase what convicts us. Even our historical timelines are absurd simplifications. Think of ancient Egypt as a single culture, but its duration was longer than the entire span from Jesus to now. They built pyramids and then built more. 1,000 years later, we compress time into convenient chunks. Because the alternative, acknowledging the depth of what we don't know, is unbearable. And even when we do know something, we still get it wrong. Archaeology is biased by what survives. We find stone tools, but miss the songs. We see palaces, but forget the people. We assume war because we're looking for it. History is distorted by its recorders. During the Middle Ages, monks copied texts by hand, often changing them. Sometimes accidentally, sometimes on purpose, sometimes because what they read made them uncomfortable. They edited Plato. They redacted Herodotus. They rewrote theology to suit doctrine. And when the printing press came, only those with access could decide what the past would now be. Even today, digital history is vulnerable. A deleted website, a corrupted file, a manipulated photo. Entire histories can be rewritten in minutes. Who controls the servers? The archives? The footage? Who decides what's misinformation versus truth? Even in your own life, your personal history is a story, not a record. You revise it constantly. You forget. You misremember. You simplify. You lie. Your past is a myth you update to justify who you are now. So if personal memory is flawed, if cultural memory is curated, if the facts are chosen, rewritten, or buried, then what exactly is history? A consensual hallucination. A narrative, written by the powerful, agreed upon by the obedient, and consumed by the unaware. You were never taught history. You were indoctrinated into someone else's version of the past. So ask, if history is a mirror held by the victor, if the dead leave no defense, if the evidence is selected and the story massaged, then how can you trust anything you think you know about where you came from? And if you can't trust your past, what are you standing on right now? The language that controls you, you think with words. You speak your mind. You explain. You understand. You narrate your own life in language, as if reality itself requires sentences to exist. You believe language is your tool, your way of expressing thoughts. But it's not. Language does not express thought. Language shapes it, and then traps it. Before you could speak, you still felt. Before you could name mother, you reached for her. Before you could define pain, you screamed. You were conscious before language. But the moment you learned to speak, your mind began to build itself in sentences. Your inner world became verbalized. You began to talk to yourself. And then you mistook the voice for you. But that voice isn't you. It's a parasite. Language colonized your mind. You think in phrases. You feel in labels. You explain even the inexpressible through grammar. And language has limits. There are colors you can't describe, emotions that don't translate, concepts that crumble under words. Other cultures have words you don't. Inuit languages have dozens. For snow, Japanese has wabi-sabi beauty in imperfection. German has Fernweh, the ache for a place you've never been. If you lack the word, do you lack the experience? Language determines the edges of your mind. This is called linguistic. Relativity is Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. You don't just speak language. Language thinks you, and grammar. Even it dictates your worldview. Some languages assign gender to objects. This affects how speakers describe them. A bridge is masculine in German, so it's strong, towering. Feminine in Spanish, so it's elegant, beautiful. Even time is shaped by syntax. English moves from left to right. Mandarin speakers imagine time as vertical. The Hopi language doesn't describe time as a line at all. That your sense of reality is coded in grammar. But you trust language. You use it to define identity, to assert truth, to name pain, to pray. And yet, every word is a symbol, not the thing itself. Tree is not a tree. Love is not love. Suffering is not what you feel in the dark. You speak in metaphors. Every sentence is a guess, a compression, an approximation of something deeper that cannot be fully articulated. And the more abstract the word, the more dangerous it becomes. Freedom, justice, evil, good. We kill for these words. But do we agree on what they mean? Language simplifies the world, reduces nuance, divides a spectrum into boxes. It tells you what things are, and by doing so, it tells you what they are not. It carves dualities. Right, wrong, self-other, here, there, now, later. But reality is not binary. It's fluid, recursive, contradictory. And yet, you try to resolve paradox with syntax. You try to describe the infinite with finite characters. Wittgenstein said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." But your world is not limited, your mind is, because it has been fenced by vocabulary, shaped by culture, constrained by what can be named. You believe speaking makes you free. But what if speech is the cage? What if the moment you describe something, you distort it? What if the most real parts of life, the awe, the terror, the silence, are the parts that language cannot reach? So now ask, if language is not a tool but a filter, if it shapes your thoughts, edits your feelings, limits your perception, then who would you be without it? And if your every belief, memory, and identity has been constructed from borrowed words, then who was ever doing the thinking? The reality you can never touch. You believe there's a world outside your mind, a real one, a shared one, a physical, tangible, solid world that exists whether you perceive it or not. You knock on a table and hear the sound. You see the sunrise. You feel pain, hunger, pressure, wind. But here's the truth. You have never experienced the world directly. Not even once. Everything you see, hear, touch, taste, and smell is not reality. It's a simulation generated inside your skull. Your senses are not windows. They are filters. They reduce, translate, distort. Start with vision. You don't see light. You see your brain's interpretation of electrical signals from photoreceptor cells. The world does not look like color. Color does not exist outside of perception. Red is not a frequency. It's a feeling your brain creates based on how it processes certain wavelengths. If you could see infrared or ultraviolet like bees or snakes, the world would look entirely different. What is real, then? The world in red, green, and blue? Or the world in heat signatures and ultraviolet patterns? You think you hear sound, but sound is just vibration. Air molecules bumping into each other. Your ears convert this into signals your brain interprets as meaning. Without a brain to process it, sound is just motion, not music. Just pressure, not language. Even touch is not direct contact. Atoms never truly touch. What you feel is electromagnetic. Repulsion, the force pushing your molecules away from another's. You are always slightly hovering, feeling force, not substance. Smell and taste. Chemical detection. Your receptors detect molecules. Your brain labels them pleasant, disgusting, familiar, dangerous. But even those perceptions change depending on context, emotion, memory. Your senses are not truth. They are survival tools. Evolution didn't optimize for accuracy. It optimized for utility. Beetles mate with beer bottles because they mistake the color and texture for a mate. Frogs strike at anything that flickers like a fly. We are not immune. Our brains construct illusions that help us navigate, not understand. The philosopher Donald Hoffman argues that perceiving reality accurately is an evolutionary disadvantage. Instead, we evolved to see a user interface icons that help us survive, not the code underneath. You are not seeing reality. You're seeing a dashboard like a desktop on a computer. You click a folder, but the folder is not real. It's a metaphor. A simplification. So is your world. And inside your brain? No light, no sound. Just chemical and electrical signals in a dark, silent cave. Your world is built entirely inside you, and yet you treat it as objective. You argue about reality. You debate what's true. You punish others for seeing it differently. But maybe they just have different filters. People with synesthesia taste colors. People on psychedelics hear thoughts. People with autism process noise as pain. People with schizophrenia see patterns where you see chaos. Which perception is real? The consensus one? The average one? The one with the most votes? Consensus is not truth. It's just agreement. So now ask, if every color, sound, texture, and flavor is created inside your mind, if your brain filters, edits, and fabricates a model of the world, if reality has never been directly experienced, then what is it you think you're living in? And if the only reality you'll ever know is the one your brain invents, then how can you be certain there's anything real behind it at all? The future you will never reach. You live as though the future exists. You plan, you prepare, you save, you dream. You think of tomorrow as a destination, a place you're heading toward, a shape forming in the mist just beyond your reach. But the future is not a place. It's a story, and you are not moving toward it. You're dragging it behind you, constructing it moment by moment, like a puppet's shadow. Begin here. The future does not exist. Not yet. Not anywhere. There is no shelf of pre-written tomorrows. No already existing moment waiting for you to arrive. Every next is a projection, a guess, a hallucination based on pattern recognition. Your brain, a prediction engine, simulates probabilities based on what it knows. It says, if I do this, then maybe that will happen. But it is only pretending to see ahead. And even that simulation is biased. Your memories shape your forecasts. Your fears exaggerate certain outcomes. Your desires filter possibilities. You see what you want, or what you dread, not what will be. Consider this. Every time you imagine the future, you are simply remembering forward, constructing new arrangements of what has already happened. You are rearranging the past and calling it fate. But fate is not real. Probability is not. Inevitability. And your life will not unfold in clean lines. It will fracture, deviate, surprise, betray. The future you imagine, wealthier, wiser, fulfilled, redeemed, is not a person. It is a hope-shaped mask, and masks have a way of cracking. Most of what you fear will never happen. And most of what will happen you could never predict. Accidents, loss, catastrophes that don't knock. Phone calls that divide your life into before and after. Moments so small, so banal, you don't even notice the pivot until years later. Is not a straight road. It is a branching fractal of choices, chaos, and chance. And yet, you worship it. You delay joy in its name. You tolerate suffering for its promise. You define your identity by who you will one day be. You say, I'll be happy when. I'll be free after. I'll matter if. But that if is a lie. Because you will always be chasing the next dot. Happiness does not live in the future. Neither does peace. Neither does selfhood. And the terrifying truth? You may not reach it at all. You may not survive tomorrow. No one promised you even one more hour. Every breath you take is a statistical miracle. Every later is borrowed. Not earned, but you pretend you are safe. You pretend that your plans are foundations. You pretend the future is yours. You schedule meetings. You buy birthday gifts in advance. You talk about next year like it's a room you're already standing in, but the room may never be built. And even if it is, you may enter it as a stranger. You may not be the you imagined. So ask, if the future is just a guess, if it's shaped by memory, bias, fear, and fiction, if it isn't real until it becomes now, and now never stops changing, then what exactly are you chasing? And if tomorrow is always just a concept you can't touch, why are you spending your life trying to get there? The death you can never witness. You know you will die. You've always known. The knowledge lurks beneath every distraction, every celebration, every silent moment. It is the one certainty you carry, and yet the one you cannot fathom. You can imagine being sick. You can imagine being buried. You can even imagine others grieving, but you cannot imagine being dead, because death is not something that happens to you. It is something that ends you. It is the termination of experience. And you cannot experience the absence of experience. You cannot know what it's like to not know. This is the final paradox. Death is the only thing you're guaranteed to meet, and yet the only thing you'll never live through. You can imagine falling asleep. You can imagine fading, but sleep has dreams. Sleep has a return. Death has no return, and it has no room for you in it. The ancient Epicureans understood this. They said, death is nothing to us. Where we are, death is not. Where death is, we are not. But you don't feel that. You feel the approach. You feel the loss of time. You feel the horizon collapsing. You fear the pain, the separation, the meaninglessness. You fear becoming nothing, but you've already been nothing before your birth. Were you? For billions of years, you did not exist. And it didn't hurt. It didn't matter. The difference now is that you've tasted awareness. And that makes its loss feel violent. But is it a loss? Or just the closing of a loop? Every cell in your body is built to expire. Apoptosis programmed cell death is what shapes your fingers in the womb. If cells didn't die, you'd have no form. You exist because parts of you don't. Death built you. Death shapes life. It is not the enemy of existence. It is the condition for it. And yet, you recoil. You imagine your own funeral, your name etched in stone, photos gathering dust, memories fading. But that's not you. That's what you leave behind. You will not see the body grow cold. You will not hear the machine stop. You will not feel time end, because you end first. Your death is not a moment. It is a vanishing. No final thought. No backward glance. No exit line. Just the sudden erasure of the simulation. And here's the twist. In the instant before death, you may still believe you will continue. The mind's last illusion, that it will wake up somewhere else, but there is no else. There is no afterward. There is no observer left to observe the end dot. And if that is true, then death is not a darkness. It's the absence of darkness. The absence of anything. And yet, you still prepare. You make wills. You build legacies. You attach your name to things, trying to be remembered. But being remembered is not the same as being alive. You are trying to trick oblivion into leaving a footprint. But oblivion cannot be impressed. It does not read names. It does not keep time. It is not a thing dot. It is the subtraction of all things dot. So now ask, if death is not something you can witness, if your end is the end of endings, if you will never feel yourself stop, then what is? It you're afraid of losing? And if there's no you to miss what's gone, then who is death really happening to? The meaning you keep inventing, you are desperate for meaning. You chase it in religion, in love, in legacy, in work. You want your life to matter. You want to believe that there's a reason you're here, that the suffering is part of something larger, that the story adds up dot, but the universe is not telling a story. It is performing a calculation, and you are not its output. Let's begin where the desperation starts. You are a pattern recognition machine. Your brain was sculpted by evolution to find structure, even where none exists. It sees faces in clouds, intent in randomness. God in silence dot, it seeks narrative like lungs seek air, because without it, there's nothing to hold on to. But meaning is not embedded in the world. It is projected onto it. The sun does not rise for you. The stars do not whisper your name. The hardships you face are not trials set before you by a cosmic author. They are accidents, consequences of entropy and biology, spun into fables by your frightened mind. Consider this. You tell yourself that your life has arcs, beginnings, middles, ends. You narrate events as if they happened for a reason. As if the heartbreak taught you something. As if the suffering was meant to be. As if every coincidence is secretly a signal. But there are no signals. Only noise that you are imposing a script onto chaos. Even language itself, remember, is structure, imposed on perception. So is morality. So is identity. So is meaning dot, and we all do it differently. A monk finds meaning in stillness. A soldier in duty. A mother in sacrifice. A billionaire in control. A child in a game. Which one is right? They all are. And none are. Because meaning is a solitary hallucination we mistake for universal truth. If it were objective, it would not shift with mood, culture, or context. And what happens when it vanishes? People break, they spiral. They lose the illusion, and the floor drops out from beneath them. They say, nothing matters. And they mean it as despair. But nothing matters is not despair. It's clarity. If nothing matters inherently, you are free from the weight of expectation, the pressure to be great, the shame of being wrong, the obsession with being important. But you don't want that freedom, because it comes with the cost, responsibility. If the universe doesn't give you meaning, then you must build it yourself, not find it, not receive it, invent it. And most people don't want to be inventors. They want to be followers. They want the comfort of a pre-written purpose, a manual, a map dot. They want to be told what their life is for, but there is no for. There is no grand designer. There is no final chapter. You are not a protagonist in a divine narrative. You are a temporary configuration of atoms, aware long enough to ask why, but not long enough to answer. And yet you keep answering. You say, my meaning is love. My meaning is to help others. My meaning is to make art, or raise a child, or seek truth. But if you died tomorrow, the stars would not blink. The planets would not pause. The laws of physics would churn on. Indifferent dot meaning exists only as long as the one who imagines it dot. So now ask, if meaning is not given but generated, if it lives only inside fragile, temporary minds, if it collapses the moment you do, then what is it you're truly living for? And if there's no meaning waiting for you at the end, why are you still pretending there's one pulling you forward? You are never holding the thread. You have spent your life trying to hold the thread of meaning, of truth, of identity, of time. But what if there was never a thread at all? What if every moment of certainty you clung to was nothing, more than a desperate improvisation, stitched together by neurons afraid of silence? You are told you were a self, but you were only a moment, a flicker of pattern, a brief coherence in a system designed to collapse. You were told there was a purpose, but there was only pressure, from nature, from culture, from fear. You were told to build a life, but you were only building shelter against the wind and calling it a cathedral. You tried to make sense of the world, but the world never promised. To make sense, it simply spun cold, recursive, and blind to your longing. You tried to find your place in history, but history is a broken mirror, shattered by the victors, polished by the liars, held up to you by ghosts who died still wondering what it meant. You tried to locate yourself in time, but time was never a line. It was always a dissolving cloud, and you were its briefest condensation. You tried to become someone, but no one is ever someone. They are a flickering feedback loop between memory and illusion, between body and story dot, and now here you are, not wiser, not freer, just more awake, which is to say, more alone. The world hasn't changed. You have dot, you see now that the floor is gone, that the sky is empty, that every question leads to another mouth, not an answer. You see that there was never an edge to step off, because you were always already falling through stories, falling through selves, falling through hopes disguised as facts dot, and maybe that was the point all along, not to find solid ground, but to finally admit there is none, there never was dot. So now ask yourself, in the quiet that follows, if you were never holding the thread, what exactly was holding you?